Chapter 489. As time passed, the atmosphere in the city became more and more oppressive. Everyone knew that Tingyu would come again. If it were any other expert, they would wait for the Empress to recover before fighting her. However, Tingyu wouldn't do so. Therefore, there was only one possibility. Tingyu was recuperating. The later he came, the better his recovery would be. On the morning of the 8th day, there were people selling breakfast on the streets. Although it wasn't as lively as before, it was still somewhat lively. As time passed, the residents of Wu City realized that the aboriginals didn't harass the civilians, which made them feel more at ease. Unknowingly, a man appeared in the city. The sound of his bamboo cane tapping on the stone slabs echoed far and wide. Spirit Spear Tingyu. Not long after he appeared in the city, he was discovered by the winged cavalry. As soon as the news spread, countless people landed on their roofs and stared coldly at the only person walking on the streets. As for the rest, they had long since hidden in their houses. Many people heard someone walking on their roofs and occasionally saw a huge foot trampling on the roofs. They hid in their houses feeling nervous and didn't know what was going on. Your Majesty, Tingyu has appeared, a guard hurriedly reported from the garden. I got it, the Empress said with her eyes closed. I will report to him when he is almost here. When Rinpochen heard that the other party was coming, his tensed heart, which had been tense for the past 2 days, felt relieved. Many things were like this. There were all sorts of guesses before it happened, but when it really happened, it was useless to think too much. Now, it all depended on the battle between the Empress and the other party. After a while, someone came to report, Your Majesty, Tingyu is 400 steps away from the door. Only then did the Empress open her eyes. The snow-white glow in her eyes was somewhat dazzling to Rinpochen. The Empress stood up and walked out. Rinpochen whispered to the guard, Get someone to bring out the box from my room. Inside were the concentrated skunk bombs and sonic bombs that he had just brought back from Earth. Although these things attacked indiscriminately, the Empress had experienced it once and was definitely more resistant to odor than the other party. Furthermore, Rinpochen guessed that since the other party was blind, his sense of smell and hearing should be stronger than ordinary people. Therefore he would be more or less affected. In a fight between experts, this was what they fought for. If the situation was not good, he could throw these two things out. Perhaps it would be effective. There's no need for that. The Empress's voice came from the front. Since he came alone, why would I do such a despicable thing? The Empress replied without turning her head. Upon hearing what Rinpochen said, she knew what he was up to. But he's quite despicable. When dealing with people like him, you don't have to be too open and above board, Rinpochen whispered. Do you think I'm the same as him? The Empress asked. Her Majesty is accomplished in both literature and martial arts, and has benefited the common people for thousands of years to come. Rinpochen immediately changed his tone. Then watch from behind. When everyone left the mansion, they saw an old man dressed in black walking over from the other end of the street with a bamboo cane in his hand. The sound of the bamboo cane hitting the stone floor reached everyone's ears. Rinpochen sized him up carefully. Was this the Spirit Spear Tingyu? He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, with a goatee and a face full of wrinkles. His ordinary facial features looked disgusting when they were squeezed onto his face. Chizi Xiao, I paid a visit last time, but I didn't expect to leave empty-handed. Now I finally see you in person. Very good, Tingyu said loudly as he stopped 50 meters in front of everyone. With your strength, there are only a handful of people in this world who can defeat you, and there aren't many who are worthy of you. You and I are a perfect match. Why don't you marry me? Even though I don't have anything valuable on me, I can still take out a mere betrothal gift. Tingyu's old face was smiling like a dead chrysanthemum, and he even revealed a mouthful of rotten teeth. No matter how Rinpochen looked at him, he felt a surge of anger rising from the bottom of his heart, and he wanted to suppress this old bastard in a cesspit. You said the same thing twice. Don't you have anything else to say? You left the last time, and this time, you specially came to deliver your head. I'll keep it, the Empress said faintly. So your injuries have recovered? No wonder you are so confident. However, there are at least 8,000 to 10,000 people who want my head. Chizi Xiao, if you want my head, I'm afraid you will have to queue for another 100 years. Tingyu carefully sensed and then laughed. Did Xia Baichong send you alone? Rinpochen interrupted. He wanted to know if Tingyu was the only one, or if there were other people who had entered Tianjin Basin. Xia Baichong? Hehe, but you are wrong. I wasn't sent by him. His things in exchange for a favor from me. It's just a transaction. You are Chizi Xiao's lover? You are just a little worm. Commit suicide. Tingyu chuckled. The last 3 words were like a demonic sound that poured into Rinpochen's ears. He used a special method to say these 3 words. It could only be used to deal with people who were much weaker than him, but it could affect the mood of others with his voice and make them feel that what he said was right. However, when these 3 words entered Rinpoche's mind, he immediately felt that what Tingyu said was right. There was indeed no meaning in living and it was better to die. His eyes turned gray. At this moment, the metal chain that was soaking his feet in his sea of knowledge suddenly sprang up. The metal chain, which was only a few meters long, suddenly extended into the sky. It went beyond the volcano and even the sky. In Rinpoche's sea of knowledge, it looked as if it was standing between heaven and earth and connected to the fields. In just a moment, the metal chain retracted and turned into a spherical cage at one end. Inside the cage there was a worm-like thing that was moving left and right. The metal chain shook the spherical cage from side to side as if it had found something fun and was reluctant to let go. Rinpoche became absent-minded for a moment before coming back to his senses. He immediately realized that he was almost hit by this move just now. The others weren't affected and it was obviously targeted at him. He immediately opened his mouth and scolded, "It takes a lot of courage to live in this world with your appearance. You are wasting food and polluting the environment while you are alive. If you die, you will be making a small contribution to the beautiful lives of the people of the world. Why don't you commit suicide? Even if it's not for the sake of others, it's on account of the fact that your mother used to live and exist in this world. You have polluted the world that she once lived in. You are simply unworthy of being a son. Remember to drown yourself in the toilet so that your corpse doesn't contaminate the soil elsewhere." Tingyu was stunned. Rinpoche wasn't affected by him at all and even scolded him? And he even scolded him in such a nasty way? Where did all these curses come from? Following that, Tingyu smiled sinisterly and said, "Sharp-tongued brat, I'll tear your mouth in a while. Let's see if you can still curse then." "You won't have that chance. I will crush your head in front of the palace square," the empress said coldly. "Build a public toilet on top of it and soak your head in it. You can go in and take a dump on the head of the world's 4th strongest expert for just 1 copper coin. I'm sure many people would be interested. You can also pay 20 copper coins a month and 2 taels of silver a year. You will also be given a VIP seat in the public toilets, priority access, no queues and free toilet paper," Rinpoche added. "I'm quite interested, ha." Shiwanya burst out laughing. "I'm also interested." Zhong Shen and Qing Ping laughed loudly. Courting death. Tingyu's face darkened completely. The bamboo cane in his hand shattered, and a spear appeared in his hand. He pointed it at the crowd. No matter how bad his character was, he was still the 4th in the world. Who would dare to insult him like this? Moreover, Rinpoche's scolding was so nasty that even he couldn't stand it. When it came to scolding people, he was really no match for that kid. He didn't gain any advantage verbally, but he almost went crazy with anger. Soak his head in the toilet? Charge fees. That was simply courting death. Even though his character wasn't worth mentioning, he was still one of the top experts in the world. His spear technique was extremely terrifying. His spear moved the wind and clouds, and the air in Wu City seemed to be stirred up by it. Everyone felt the surrounding airflow start to spin, and a gale started to blow. Even though Tingyu was still standing in his original spot, his spear tore through the air, and the silver tip of the spear occupied everyone's field of vision. Even an Iron Man would be torn to pieces by this spear. This was the terror of the 4th most powerful expert in the world. The Empress moved and struck with her palm. Boom. A wave of air forced everyone to retreat. If Shiwanya wasn't waiting, Rinpoche would have been able to kite the Empress. The walls around them collapsed, followed by the houses in the courtyard. The stone slabs on the ground between them turned into powder. There was even a 3-meter wide and 5-meter deep gully on the ground. This was the mark of this spear attack. Boom. The buildings on both sides collapsed with a loud rumble. Crash. Amidst the broken tiles, a head with a face full of dust and dirt popped out. Chapter 490. Boom, boom, boom. As the 2 of them fought, the buildings on the street collapsed one by one. A black and a red figure shuttled back and forth amidst the rising dust. Tingyu flicked his spear on the ground, sending pieces of stone slabs flying toward the Empress. However, they were turned into dust by her jade-like palms. Purple thunder. Tingyu shouted as the spear in his hand turned into a Z-shaped bolt of lightning and struck at the Empress. The Empress continued to resist with her bare palms. Shockwaves rippled in the air and swept in all directions, causing another building to collapse. Rinpoche was dazzled by the battle. The purple pattern on the Empress's face was so beautiful that it made his heart palpitate incessantly. He wanted to sing a song but he lacked an eru. How much of Ting Yu's strength has recovered? Rinpoche asked Shiwanya. With his eyesight he could only watch the show and couldn't see much. Most of the time he couldn't even see the figures clearly. Occasionally he would see the Empress's red clothes fluttering in the wind. Her skin was covered with purple patterns, which made her look mysterious and beautiful. I can't tell, but it's at least 80%. Maybe even 90%. Shiwanya said in a deep voice. What are the chances of winning, Your Majesty? Swallow the mountain. Ting Yu shouted again as the spear in his hand turned into a giant golden python. It bared its snow-white teeth and opened its mouth to swallow the Empress. The Empress didn't seem to know how to dodge. From the start of the battle until now, she hadn't retreated or dodged at all. Rinpoche recalled watching the Empress fight with the spirit wheel experts from Tianjing Basin. She didn't seem to dodge at all and mostly fought hard with her bare palms. At this moment, the Empress twisted her slender waist in the air, turned half a circle, and waved her fingers up and down as if she was tearing something apart. Before the golden python in the air could even touch the Empress, it was immediately torn apart from its mouth and turned into golden specks of light. A spear flew back into Ting Yu's hand. Prison suppression. Ting Yu caught the spear with one hand, spun it half a circle in the air, and bent the body of the spear into the shape of a bow. Before the spear even landed, the air below the spear was pushed to the sides, and a gully even appeared on the ground. In Rinpoche's eyes he didn't see a spear strike. Instead he saw a black mountain sitting on the tip of the spear and pressing down on the Empress. Boom. Both parties collided again, and the Empress was smashed down from the sky, creating a huge crater on the ground. The black mountain in the sky disappeared. Ting Yu's spear bounced up high, drew a big circle behind him and shot straight down at the Empress. Rinpoche's heart tightened. However, at this moment the Empress was in the pit and couldn't see anything. Ting Yu went down quickly, but he came up even faster. As he somersaulted, he flew upward and completed a 3,600-degree free turn in the air before he regained his balance. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. A red figure soared into the sky and collided with Ting Yu again. Rinpoche's palms were sweating as he watched from below. In theory, the Empress shouldn't be weaker than Ting Yu. After all, Ting Yu was still injured and hadn't fully recovered. However, this was only in theory. No one knew if Ting Yu had any trump cards. Moreover, in a battle between experts, victory or defeat was determined by a fine line. Being weaker didn't mean that one wouldn't lose. Fortunately, both of them were equal in strength. Even if there was a fine line between victory and defeat, their lives wouldn't be in danger. Rinpoche still had Shiwanya and the others on his side. Even though they were all seriously injured, it shouldn't be a problem to restrain Ting Yu. Even if the Empress lost, her life wouldn't be in danger. Stop pulling. Rinpoche slapped the hand that was tugging at his clothes. It was a tender and smooth little hand. Rinpoche turned his head and saw Lin Xiaola sitting behind him. Her face was covered in dirt, and she was drooling as she stared at the bag of sweets hanging on his waist. He grabbed a handful of sweets for Lin Xiaola. Rinpoche turned his head and saw a red figure being smashed down. Boom. Heaven's net. Ting Yu shouted. It was as if countless meteors appeared in the sky and smashed toward the Empress. In fact, they were countless spear shadows that emitted a golden glow. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of metal colliding could be heard coming from the huge pit. Earth net. Ting Yu's voice was heard. A golden ray of light that was far more dazzling than the other spear shadows pierced straight into the earth. Rinpoche immediately felt a violent tremor coming from under his feet. Not good. Shiwanya's expression changed. Without thinking, he grabbed Rinpoche's clothes and jumped out. Qing Yuan and Hong Wan were also brought away by Zhong Shen and Qing Ping. Just as everyone left the ground was covered with countless cracks. Following which, spear energy shot up into the sky. This area was filled with streaks of spear energy. Bang! Ting Yu collided with the Empress again, but this time he was charging toward everyone like lightning. Where do you think you're going? Shiwanya shouted. The long saber on his back appeared in his hand, and a snow-white saber light swept up like a waterfall from the bottom to the top. When he made his move, he threw Rinpoche toward Qing Ping. However, at this moment, Ting Yu's spear tapped on the saber light. His body made a turn and swept past Ting Yu. Not good. Qing Ping shouted angrily, but it was already too late. Rinpoche was originally thrown into the air. Fortunately, he was used to being thrown and didn't panic. Just as he expected, a big hand grabbed his collar and caught him. However, why was he getting further and further away from everyone? Ting Yu, you are one of the top experts in the world. How could you do such a thing? Why aren't you putting Principal Rin down? Qing Ping grabbed Hong Yuan and landed on a pile of rubble while shouting at Tingyu. Rin Baqin? *CK I was caught by this old bastard Tingyu? The person behind me is Tingyu? Rin Baqin's forehead was immediately drenched in sweat, and his heart felt as if it was being squeezed tightly by a big hand. Let him go. The Empress bounced up again as soon as she landed and chased after them. Cheesy Xiao, you better stop. Otherwise I will strangle him now. Tingyu's gloomy voice sounded behind Rin Baqin. I'm finished. Rin Baqin felt like cursing 10,000 times. Following Tingyu's words, Rin Baqin finally landed on the ground, but he felt that his legs were a little weak. Tingyu, what are you trying to do? The Empress asked coldly as she landed about 50 meters away from them. The Empress's current condition wasn't too good. Many parts of her body were broken, revealing blood-red wounds. You actually stopped. It seems like you value this fellow quite a lot. Tingyu laughed mischievously. It's just that I feel that if we fight to the death, I won't be able to leave with so many of you here. If you hurt him, even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, I will still kill you and dismember you into 1,000 pieces. Rin Baqin, Your Majesty, aren't you telling the other party that I'm a good handle? Should I ask Your Majesty to leave me alone and take revenge for me, or should I ask Your Majesty not to be impulsive? Tingyu laughed mischievously behind Rin Baqin. Even without turning his head, Rin Baqin could hear the meaning behind these words. Soon after he felt himself being thrown backward. Following which, he felt a sharp pain in his body as a spear nailed him to the wall. After being nailed to the wall by a spear, Rin Baqin felt his vision turn black and almost fainted from the pain. Even though the spear didn't pierce his vital points, it did pierce through the area below his shoulder blade. The waves of pain stimulated his brain. Tingyu stood 2 meters in front of Rin Baqin and said calmly, Cheesy Xiao, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? I will definitely kill you. The Empress's voice was filled with murderous intent. Since you are going to kill me anyway, it doesn't matter if this fellow lives or dies. Coincidentally, I hate that mouth of his, so I might as well tear it apart. Tingyu laughed heartily. How dare you? The Empress glared at him and subconsciously took a step forward. Don't move. Tingyu slapped the shaft of the spear with the back of his hand. The spear was immediately nailed in a few centimeters, and the pain made Rin Baqin's vision turn black. Tingyu, you are simply courting death. Shiwanya, Qing Ping and the others caught up and glared at Tingyu. Why don't you slap yourself with your palm and lower your strength by 30%, then we can fight again. With so many of you around, I can feel at ease. Tingyu looked at the Empress and laughed. The Empress stared at him in silence. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Shiwanya hurriedly shouted. All right. The Empress raised her palm. Your Majesty. Everyone cried out. The Empress stared intently at Tingyu, as well as Rin Baqin who was behind him. Attract his attention. Rin Baqin mouthed. Even though he was in so much pain that his vision turned black, he didn't make any sound. Your Majesty. Everyone was still shouting. Noisy. The Empress slapped her palm to the side, and a gust of air immediately sent Shiwanya flying. Good. Good. Not bad, you're indeed loyal and sentimental. Tingyu laughed loudly when he saw this. Just as Tingyu was laughing, he suddenly felt that something was amiss behind him. He swatted his palm behind him, but unexpectedly he missed. He slammed into the wall behind him, smashing it into pieces. But he was gone, and so was his gun. Shiwanya, Qing Ping, Zhong Xin, Lin Qiaola, Qingyun Sword and Zhucheng. Except for Tingyu, everyone clearly saw Rin Baqin disappear from the wall with Tingyu's gun. Chapter 491. When Rin Baqin returned to earth, his legs went soft and he fell to his knees. When the spear hit the ground, he almost fainted from the pain, but he didn't dare to pull it out. If he pulled it out from such a wound, he would definitely lose a lot of blood. Furthermore, he lived far away from the city, and he didn't want to test the hemostasis ability of his visualization of wood. If he made a mistake, he would be cremated by the time the ambulance arrived. After panting for a long time, Rin Baqin supported his body and staggered to the second floor to make a call. Shinfeng, call the ambulance to my house. If it's any later, you will lose your job. Rin Baqin's voice was a little weak, but it was still stable. The most dangerous moment was before he came back. After all, it took about 1 second for him to transmigrate. When the Empress discovered that he had transmigrated, she rushed over from a few meters away to catch him. He was really afraid that if Tingyu found out and brought him back, he would really die a tragic death. Fortunately, Tingyu was distracted by the Empress at that time, and it was already too late by the time he realized it. For a moment just now he really felt that he was going to die. After all, the fourth most powerful expert in the world was so despicable that even the Empress couldn't save him if he fell into his hands. Fortunately, he was careless and used the spear to pin him to the wall to provoke the Empress. This gave him a chance. Otherwise, the grass on his grave would be 5 feet tall by this time next year. Rinpoche leaned against the bed and pressed the tip of the spear against it. This way, the force of the spear's fall was reduced, and the pain from the wound was lessened. Even though it was better than nothing, it more or less made him feel better. After feeling slightly better, Rinpoche started to laugh. He wasn't dead, but that bastard Tingyu was going to die. The fourth most powerful expert in the world? Rinpoche wondered what kind of expression he would have when he realized that his heaven-grade weapon, which he had painstakingly built his entire life, had disappeared. It would definitely be a sight to behold. He really wanted to see it with his own eyes. However, he probably wouldn't have the chance to do so. If a group of people couldn't stop Tingyu without his spear, then he wouldn't be the fourth most powerful expert in the world, but the number one expert in the world. As he let his imagination run wild, he watched as blood flowed along the golden veins on the spear and gradually formed a pool of blood. He still didn't hear the sound of the ambulance. Rinpoche began to feel anxious. He called Xin Feng again to confirm that she wasn't far away and felt a little more at ease. The golden patterns on the spear looked as if they were carved into the spear. One could feel the uneven surface of the spear with their hands, which served as a blood groove. Although each of the lines was very shallow, there were many of them. The following period of time was simply torturous. Rinpoche felt his strength begin to drain away, his body became weaker and weaker, and his head began to feel dizzy. The iron chain emerged from the top of his head. After twisting a few times, it wrapped itself around the body of the spear as if it wanted to pull the spear out. The metal chain in Rinpoche's body also sensed danger. If Rinpoche died, it would lose its place of existence and vanish in a puff of smoke. The movement of the metal chain pulling the spear jolted Rinpoche out of his daze, and he hurriedly stopped it. Fortunately, he heard the sound of an ambulance coming from afar and stopping in front of the courtyard. Then they stopped outside the villa and knocked on the door a few times. Rinpoche could hear the sounds coming from downstairs, but he didn't have the strength to get up and go to the window to call for them. Fortunately, a moment later, someone opened the door with a key. It was probably Xin Feng who had arrived at the same time as the ambulance. Following the trail of blood, the group hurried to the second floor and found Rinpoche, who had been pierced by a spear with golden lines. Everyone was astonished. Firstly, they were astonished by the spear. Secondly, they were astonished by the clothes that Rinpoche was wearing. After all, he was still wearing Dayo's official uniform. "Boss, how are you feeling?" Xin Feng didn't hide the astonishment on her face as she hurriedly ran over and asked. "I'm still alive. It's hard to say if we don't save him now," Rinpoche replied weakly. The group of people didn't dare to touch the spear on Rinpoche's body and hurriedly carried him sideways to the ambulance. However, the spear was nearly 2 meters long, and it was inevitable that it would bump into something. This caused Rinpoche to grimace in pain. His hatred for Tingyu couldn't even be washed away by the torrential river. After getting into the ambulance, Rinpoche finally relaxed. Just now, when he came out, he saw some people standing in the distance. They were presumably from the Messier 87 department. It was impossible for them to not know about such a big matter. Since they knew, they wouldn't let him die so easily. Compared to the hospital, Rinpoche had more faith in the strength of the Messier 87 department. As the vehicle started moving, Rinpoche's vision turned black, and he gradually fell asleep. That spear is gone. Rinpoche had just fainted when chaos broke out in the ambulance. That was because the ancient spear with golden veins had suddenly disappeared. The person who had been pressing down on Rinpoche's blood vessels to help him stop the bleeding was in a flurry. Finally, he managed to stop the bleeding. When the ambulance arrived at the hospital, many people rushed into the emergency room to treat Rinpoche. In fact, his problem wasn't difficult to deal with, and it was easier to stop the bleeding. After all, his ability to stop bleeding was much stronger than ordinary people. However, Rinpoche's problem was that he couldn't get a blood transfusion. His blood type was very ordinary, but his body was extremely resistant to other people's blood. It seems that when one's strength reaches a certain level, the body will change from the inside out, including the blood. A few doctors who had never appeared in this hospital before looked at each other, and someone beside them immediately recorded it down. When Rinpoche woke up, it was already 2 days later. He was awakened by hunger in his stomach, and it was as if his internal organs were rebelling. As mentioned before, his injuries weren't considered serious, and Ting Yu didn't pierce his vital organs. However, he had lost a lot of blood and he couldn't receive a blood transfusion, so he was relatively weak. Boss, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Shin Feng was sitting by the bed and playing with her phone. Let's hear the bad news first, Rinpoche said weakly. He wondered if there was something wrong with his body. You have kidney stones and liver stones. Do you want them removed? Shin Feng asked. Rinpoche's face turned green when he heard this. He had cultivated the visualization of water and visualization of wood, and they corresponded to the kidney and liver. He wouldn't believe that there was nothing wrong with them. He gritted his teeth and said, I will smash the head of anyone who dares to remove my stones. Boss, are you really not going to reconsider? Kidney stones can cause urination difficulties and kidney dysfunction. Shin Feng asked. Rinpoche looked at her with a murderous gaze, which made her shiver, and she quickly swallowed her words. What's the good news? Rinpoche asked again. Boss, you are fine. You just need to rest for a period of time. This is good news, right? Shin Feng said with a smile. With such a smile on that neutral and cold face, he looked a little more like a woman. Rinpoche heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this and said to Shin Feng, hurry up and get me something to eat. Enough for 10 people. 20 minutes later, Rinpoche asked while drinking porridge, where's the gun? It disappeared. It disappeared not long after you were carried to the ambulance. Shin Feng was surprised when she mentioned this matter. Boss, what's that? You will know when you have the chance in the future. Rinpoche waved his hand. However, he would have to wait until a spirit wheel expert and a heaven-grade weapon appeared on Earth. Since the gun had disappeared, it should be the same as the metal chain. Ting Yu was probably dead by now. After drinking an entire bucket of porridge, Rinpoche finally felt alive. Although he was still weak, it was only a matter of time before he recovered. After finishing his meal, Rinpoche closed his eyes and entered the visualization of fire. He saw a long spear covered in golden veins and a silver-white metal chain leaning against each other on a river of lava. It was as if they were living together, soaking their feet. The spear trembled a few times when Rinpoche came in and ignored him. The metal chain didn't care about him at all. It stuck one end into the lava, trembled, and pulled it back. After a long time, it stuck it in again. Rinpoche, who had already experienced it once, wasn't too surprised. He just felt a toothache looking at these two fellows. The iron chain and the long spear had both settled down in his sea of consciousness? Would he have to gather 18 types of weapons in the future? When he reached the spirit wheel level and subdued them, he would be able to show off the 18 types of weapons in a fight. Even if he couldn't beat his opponent, he could still intimidate them with 18 heaven-grade weapons. Chapter 492. Principal Ren, Her Majesty is waiting for you. All of a sudden, Rinpoche returned to the streets of Dayo from his room. The glaring and scorching sun made him unable to open his eyes for a moment. Then he heard Gong Zheng's voice. Rinpoche squinted his eyes and began to size up his surroundings. The surroundings were in ruins and the original appearance of the street could no longer be seen. Dozens of winged cavalry warriors were standing there, and Captain Gong Zheng was standing beside him. He didn't know how long he had been waiting. Ting Yu is dead? Rinpoche turned his head and asked. I'll leave the remaining head for Principal Ren. Gong Zheng grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. At that time his gun was missing. Wasn't that exciting? This was what Rinpoche was concerned about. This was the fourth most powerful expert in the world and he was slightly stronger than the Empress. Rinpoche really wanted to see what kind of expression he would have when the heaven-grade weapon that he had painstakingly created for decades disappeared. Gong Zheng's expression immediately turned strange. One had to know that heaven-grade weapons were condensed from spirits. They could be broken but they couldn't be snatched away. This was common knowledge. However, this understanding was shattered by the person in front of him. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Principal Rin disappeared with that gun. He would never forget Ting Yu's expression and mournful howl. Even on the brink of death, Ting Yu was still trying to summon his divine weapon. After listening to Gong Zheng's account of what happened after he disappeared, Rinpoche burst into laughter. You stabbed me with your spear and I stole your spear. No matter what, he finally felt that he had gotten his revenge. Under the protection of many winged cavalry warriors, Rinpoche truly witnessed the destructive power of this battle. It was estimated that at least 1/10 of the city had been turned into ruins. Broken walls and debris could be seen everywhere along the street. The stone slabs that were originally laid on the ground had also disappeared, and large pits could be seen everywhere. Looking into the distance, even part of the city wall had collapsed. Teng Yu wanted to escape, but unfortunately he did not succeed. If it was the max level of 10, he had put 10 points into his spear skill points and 5 points into his boxing skill points. Without the divine weapon, the final result could be seen. As for the 2 bamboo spears in Wu City, ordinary weapons simply couldn't withstand the strength of a spirit wheel expert. What are the casualties? Ren Baqin asked. This time we all hid far away, so it's fine. Where are the civilians? Ren Baqin pointed around. A few hundred. They were all affected by the aftermath. I saw that they dug out a lot of them from the ruins. Gong Jing scratched his head. He had not paid much attention to this matter. Almost all of the largest mansions in Wu City were in that area, but now they were all in ruins. This time around they occupied a large courtyard. The Empress occupied the one with the best view. The courtyard could only be described as ordinary, but the original owner must have decorated it meticulously. There were flowers everywhere in the courtyard, and they weren't neat like ordinary courtyards. Instead, there were many kinds of flowers planted together. The effect was very unique, and it had a unique sense of beauty. In addition, the fragrance of these flowers gathered together to form a very pleasant smell. As soon as Ren Baqin walked into the courtyard, he felt refreshed. Your Majesty, I missed you so much. Ren Baqin shouted when he saw the Empress. After going through another round of life and death, Ren Baqin felt especially amiable when he saw the Empress. The Empress rolled her eyes at him. There are no more candies. Ren Baqin, Your Majesty, I almost died. Can't we be a little more gentle? Ren Baqin sighed. If she was gentle, she wouldn't be the Empress. Your Majesty, how are your injuries? Ren Baqin walked to the Empress's side, sat down and asked softly. Not a big deal. Will it take another month this time? Ren Baqin asked subconsciously. When he saw the Empress raise her eyebrows, he knew that he had guessed correctly. The Empress just didn't want to make a move. If she did, she would definitely be injured. She would definitely be injured. Thinking about the 5th most powerful person in the world. Now she was the 4th most powerful person in the world. It was such a sad story. Which expert in the novels and movies didn't have a sword that could chill 14 continents? Then they would leave with a wave of their sleeves, and they would float away like an immortal. Each was more pretentious than the other. For example, Lu Xiaofeng and Shimen Chueshua, who would be seriously injured every time they made a move. In any case, they would be seriously injured if they won and seriously injured if they lost. Oh, they hadn't lost yet. However, they would still be seriously injured every time. Do you have a problem with that? The Empress saw Ren Baqin's strange expression and looked at him with a murderous look. She squinted her beautiful eyes. Your Majesty, you are wise and virtuous. You will unify the world for thousands of generations. Ren Baqin exclaimed. The Empress then ignored him. Your Majesty, do you like this courtyard? I think the garden outside is quite unique. Ren Baqin changed the topic. Not bad. It's a bit rustic. The Empress said faintly. The palace happens to lack a gardener. Why don't we get someone to send him and his family to the palace to take care of the garden for your Majesty? That's exactly what I want. The Empress nodded. Also, I saw a good carpenter previously and can get someone to send him back to the palace. Tianjing Basin still has some talents. The people in the palace are all clumsy and can't do such meticulous work. The Empress deeply agreed with Ren Baqin's words. It was indeed difficult for her people to do such meticulous work. Ren Baqin chatted with the Empress for a while. After lunch he said, I'm going to see how the little monk, Qingyun Sword, and the others are doing. Go. The Empress waved her hand. Ren Baqin walked to the door before turning his head and saying, Your Majesty, if something like this happens again, avenge me. Thump. The Empress's wine pot smashed directly on his head. Ren Baqin was drenched and reeked of sorghum wine. Then another cup. Then a table. Ren Baqin quickly ran away with his head full of sorghum wine. He sighed in his heart. It was rare for him to be so heroic, but the Empress didn't even give him a chance to perform. Sigh, such is life. Ren Baqin sighed. However, the Empress's performance made him feel happy from the bottom of his heart. Where's Ting Yu's body? Ren Baqin ran out of the courtyard and asked the guards. It's hanging on top of the city wall. Upon hearing this, Ren Baqin hurriedly got someone to bring a fork-horned cow and ride it to the top of the city wall. He saw a head hanging high above the city wall. The connection between the head and the body was uneven, and it looked like it had been broken off by someone. As for the head, it had long been beaten to the point that it was unrecognizable. Is there nothing else? Ren Baqin asked. There is something else. Her Majesty has already soaked it in ash and is preparing to display it for a period of time before bringing it back to Lan City and burying it in the square in front of the palace. Bring me there. Since there were other things, Rinpoche was prepared to bring them back to Earth for the Messiah 87 department to study. As for this head, it was better to leave it here. After all, there were spirits in this world, and Ting Yu's heaven-grade weapon was still soaking in his sea of knowledge. He didn't know if there were any remnants in this head. In the past, Rinpoche felt that the Aboriginals' habit of burying the corpses of their enemies was a superstition of an uncivilized race. Now that he had more contact with them, he didn't dare to think so anymore. He had always been by the Empress's side, hadn't been to many places and hadn't seen many things. Perhaps there were demons and monsters deep in the mountains and forests. Ning Kaichen had mentioned this to him in the past, but he had always treated it as bragging. Now that he thought about it, there might really be something in this world. If it existed, it was most likely to be in the head. Chapter 493. How have you been these few days? Rinpoche felt a sense of closeness to the little monk in front of him. After all, he had brought the little monk from Earth. It could be said that the little monk was his only fellow countryman in this world, and he was still such a young child. Even Rinpoche couldn't help but pay some attention to him. Upon hearing Rinpoche's words, the little monk was on the verge of crying. He stuttered, "This place is so scary. The people here are so scary." The fiercest person he had seen in the temple was the president of the commandment yard, who always had a straight face. But compared to the people here, he was really kind. If he had to choose, he would rather face the president of the commandment yard every day. Not only were the people here twice as strong as ordinary people, but they also looked fierce. Many of them had scars on their faces and bodies. Even if they smiled at you, you would still be afraid. Not to mention, there was an earth-shattering battle that razed a large area of houses to the ground. All of this caused the little monk to live in fear for the past 2 days. "Fake, it's all fake," Rinpoche immediately said. "Your negative karma is too heavy, so everything you see is scary. This place is like a Jura hell. In fact, this is because your negative karma has obscured your vision. Everything you see is fake. The people here are actually kind and benevolent, but you've been deceived." After saying that, Rinpoche gave himself a thumbs up. He really had the root of wisdom. He had such attainments just by reading Buddhist scriptures. This level of talent was probably unmatched by others. But they demolished the houses. They are preparing to demolish this place and rebuild it. "You lied to me." The little monk burst into tears. "I saw a human head. It was so scary." Those were extremely vicious people who had to resort to thunderous means. Even Buddhism has a glaring vajra, let alone the secular world. There are many extremely vicious people here, so your master asked you to follow me to pass down the teachings of Buddhism and enlighten those who haven't committed any serious crimes. "Is that so?" the little monk asked while sobbing. "Will your master push you into the fire pit?" The little monk thought for a moment, then burst into tears again. "Master must have found out that I stole his tea, tore his underwear, peed on his bed, roasted the rabbit in the mountain, stewed the fish in the lotus pond, killed so many mosquitoes, knocked over the everlasting lamp in front of the Buddha, ate the fruits on the tree, and even told Lin Guerra that I would renounce asceticism and marry her when I grow up." Pooh! Rinpoche almost spat out the tea in his mouth. He looked at the pitiful little monk and thought to himself, "You deserve to die. If I were your master, you would have been dead by now. Basically, you've done everything a monk shouldn't do." To be able to do so many things at such a young age, he must be a talent. Rinpoche comforted the little monk a few more times. After a long time, the little monk Xing Ruo finally stopped sobbing. "In the future, we'll have to rely on passing down the Dharma. However, this place was different from the Tranquil Temple. If you went to the Tranquil Temple, you would come into contact with people who had a certain understanding of the Buddhist Dharma. In other words, in the place where you used to live, even the most ignorant person would have heard the phrase, Amitabha. However, here no one knows about Buddhism and no one knows what you're doing. As for the future, it's up to you. Whether you can stand firm here and be believed by people will depend on you. If you can cultivate to perfection one day, you might be able to meet your master." "I understand," Xing Ruo said with reddened eyes. "I can't teach you these things. You'll have to rely on yourself in the future. Think about it first." After the little monk left, Rinpoche shook his head. Xing Ruo was too young. He hoped that Su Wen didn't send him here for no reason. He hoped that Xing Ruo could achieve what he wanted to see. Not long after the little monk left, before Rinpoche sent someone to look for Qingyun's sword and Ting Qingshan, they came to visit first. When they saw Su Wen, they stared at him for a long time. Su Wen's abduction of Ting Yu's heaven-grade weapon was more of a shock to them than to the Aboriginals. After all, the Aboriginals didn't cultivate their souls and focused on tempering their bodies. Although they were surprised by this matter, they weren't too shocked. However, they were different. When they thought about how the heaven-grade weapon, which they had painstakingly condensed, disappeared just like that, they felt like dying. They really wanted to know how Rinpoche did it. Have you made arrangements for your men? Are there any problems? Rinpoche didn't care about their gazes and asked first. Everything has been arranged, the two answered. They were only affected by the shockwaves at the periphery and weren't affected much. That's good. Rinpoche nodded. Did something happen for the two of you to come all the way here? Sir, the candidates have been selected. When will they come to look for you? Zhuoqing asked. Let them look for Gong Zheng tomorrow morning and let him inform me, Rinpoche said. He then thought of something and asked, the people we sent out should be arriving soon, right? Is there any news? It's about time, but there hasn't been any news yet. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for some time, Consort said. Inform me if there's any news. In addition, you guys don't have to stay there anymore. You can let them out every day. However, if anyone runs away, kill 2 of them. Start with those who are close to you. If a son runs away, kill his parents. If a disciple runs away, kill his master. If there's no one close to you, draw lots. Whoever gets caught will be unlucky. I'm giving you preferential treatment because I'm kind and giving you a chance. I hope you remember not to make mistakes and ruin your own path. If there's anyone who doesn't know their place, it's best to settle it yourself so that others won't be implicated, Rinpoche said faintly. The 2 of them tensed up when they heard Rinpoche's words. Although this person in front of them wasn't very powerful, his mind was like that of an evil spirit. If everyone had been imprisoned there, nothing would have happened. However, Rinpoche allowed everyone to move freely in the city. This meant that he wanted them to personally deal with those who didn't know their place. There was also the news that he had previously sent to the south. Ever since Qingyun's sword and the others surrendered, they had been forced to slide down the abyss step by Rinpoche and were unable to escape. This person's mind was as vicious as that of an evil spirit. They really didn't know how much hatred there would be in Tianjin Basin in the future and how much trust there would be left. You may leave. Rinpoche waved his hand. After the 2 of them left, he went to look for the Empress. He accompanied the Empress to look at the flowers in the courtyard and casually told her about this matter. The Empress replied absent-mindedly. These kinds of conspiracies and tricks weren't her cup of tea. She preferred to be straightforward. Your Majesty, shall I read your palm? Rinpoche saw that she wasn't interested and didn't mention it again. He reached out and grabbed one of the Empress's fingers. You used this trick last time. The Empress rolled her eyes. Can't you show some sincerity? In that case, let's read your palm this time. Rinpoche immediately scrutinized the Empress's face. Recently, I've been practicing Buddhism and have benefited a lot. Chapter 494. Xing Ruo pushed open the door and saw a murderous guard standing outside. He was 9 meters tall and weighed more than 150 kilograms. Half of his body was covered in leather armor and was covered in scars. Xing Ruo's calves immediately cramped up. Fake, fake. Xing Ruo muttered to himself twice in his heart. He forced himself to calm down, turned around and gently closed the door. Then he tiptoed outside. Even though he had always behaved like an ordinary kid and was a little timid, Rinpoche always doubted whether he could do well. However, he was sent by Su Wen and naturally wasn't a slow-witted person. After thinking for 2 days in his room, he figured it out and was ready to take the first step out of this residence to take a look. That guard turned his head to look at him. The way he looked at him as if he was examining his prey immediately made Xing Ruo shiver. He quickly lowered his head and hurriedly walked out. It's fake, it's fake, it's fake. They are all kind-looking good people. It's all because of negative karma. Xing Ruo kept muttering in his heart. Then he bumped into the person who was entering the courtyard and was knocked over. Well, kid, watch where you walk. Gong Zheng was the one who bumped into him. He knew that this little baldy was related to Rinpoche, so he lowered his head to pick him up and put him on the ground. This process was no different from picking up a doll. Where are you going? Gong Zheng stood there like a wall, blocking even the sunlight and casting a shadow over Xing Ruo. Coupled with his sinister smile, Xing Ruo pouted and looked like he was about to cry. Fake, it's all fake. Xing Ruo shouted with his eyes closed. What's fake? Gong Zheng scratched his head. Was this little baldy a fool? Xing Ruo opened his eyes and trembled as he said, You are a good person. Of course. Whoever dares to say that I'm not a good person, I will tear him apart, pull out his intestines, wrap them around his neck and strangle him to death. Finally, I will chop him into meat paste and feed him to the babe beast." Gong Zheng sneered. Xing Ruo was frightened by Gong Zheng's ferocity and almost turned around to run back to his room. But thinking that he could only rely on himself now, Xing Ruo suppressed his fear and stood there trembling. "It's fake. Actually, you're kind and benevolent. It's just that the negative karma has covered my eyes." Gong Zheng? Kind-looking and kind? Kind and kind? Was he referring to himself? It should be, right? That seemed to be the case. "Amit Ba, I want to go out," Xing Ruosui said with a trembling voice. "Oh, be careful." Gong Zheng scratched his head. Hearing this ferocious-looking man in front of him tell him to be careful, Xing Ruo instantly felt that it was just as the Arhat had said. The ferociousness was all fake. It was all just a facade. Xing Ruo put his palms together in front of Gong Zheng. Then he carefully moved a few steps to the side before quickly walking out the door. Gong Zheng turned his head and looked at the back of the fleeing figure, then said to the guards in the courtyard, "Did you hear that? He said that I'm kind and benevolent, and that children don't lie. It must be true." The guard pursed his lips. "Don't you know what kind of person you are? You don't think so?" When Gong Zheng saw him curling his lips, he immediately flew into a rage. He raised his fist, which was as big as a clay pot, and sent the guard flying. After leaving the courtyard, Xing Ruo felt a lot bolder. When a group of winged cavalry walked toward him, he immediately stood to the side and thought to himself, "It's fake." He put his palms together and said, "Amit Ba." Then he saw two guards standing to the side. He thought to himself, "It's fake." He put his palms together and said, "Amit Ba." However, he was surrounded by winged cavalry warriors and people from the Protectorate of the South. When Xing Ruo encountered people for the third time, he stood to the side and said, "It's fake. Amit Ba. It's fake. Amit Ba." Xing Ruo stood on the side of the street and looked at the aboriginal soldiers passing by. "It's fake. Amit Ba." Xing Ruo realized that these people weren't as scary as they looked. Just as the Arhat had said, he became a little bolder. The group of winged cavalry warriors and guards were baffled. What fake Amit Ba? Could it be a local dialect? Was it actually a greeting? It took the little monk an hour to walk out of the street. He was finally able to occasionally see ordinary people, which made him feel a lot more at ease. Along the way, he looked at the quaint buildings on both sides of the street and the ordinary pedestrians. Whenever he met someone, he would say, "Amit Ba." After strolling until noon, Xing Ruo felt a little hungry. He found a roadside shop, put his palms together and said, "Amit Ba. Benefactor, can you give me a bowl of water and a bowl of rice?" The shopkeeper's face immediately turned black when he heard this. "If a little beggar like you asked for a cup of water and some food, I'll give it to you. You actually want rice? Those things are shipped from Great Xia and even I can't afford them. No, get lost." The little monk wasn't discouraged after being chased out and continued to beg for alms at the next shop. Get lost. The second shopkeeper's reaction was exactly the same as the first one. "Amit Ba. Benefactor, can you give me a bowl of water and a bun? Pancakes are fine too." The little monk lowered his request at the third shop. "No, leave quickly. If you don't leave, I'll beat you up." The shopkeeper immediately picked up his broom after hearing this. Arhat is right. The people here don't respect Buddha, don't know true kindness, and don't have a merciful heart. Those who look like fiends are actually kind and charitable. They look easy to talk to but are actually very vicious, Xing Ruo thought to himself. Finally, a few winged cavalry warriors who had seen him before passed by. Seeing that he was hungry, they threw him a piece of jerky and a pot of water, which made him feel very grateful. He was even more certain of his thoughts. Fake Amit Ba. Principal Ren, our brothers who went to the north will be back in the city in 2 hours. I heard that they brought back a lot of people. How should we settle them? A guard entered the room and asked Ren Bachien. What do you mean fake Amit Ba? Ren Bachien was confused. It's the dialect of the southern natives of Tianjing Basin, and it means to say hello, the guard explained seriously. Recently, it seemed to be quite popular to say this. In any case, he saw a few guards who came in from outside greet him this way. Oh. Ren Bachien was a little suspicious, but he didn't think too much about it and called for the guards to leave the city. At this moment, besides the original Aboriginal guards, there were 6 other people following behind Ren Bachien. 4 of them were in their 30s or 40s and they were all from the Lingshan sect. 2 of them used swords, 1 used a spear and the last used a pair of steel sabers. The other two were slightly older and were from Qingyun sword. One looked like an old farmer and used a fork as a weapon. The other had white hair and beard, but he had a sturdy build and was only slightly weaker than the aboriginals. He used a long saber. All 6 of them were earth wheel experts and weren't considered weak. In the past they were all experts, but now they had become Rinpoche's guards. However, seeing that the weakest among the winged cavalry was at the earth wheel level, they didn't feel that it was unfair. If there was, it was because they had fought to the death before, but now they were mixed in with the aboriginals as guards, which made them feel somewhat uncomfortable. The group left the city and didn't wait for long before they saw a group of people coming from afar. At the front were the people from the Golden Ring residence, and behind them were hundreds of people. Everyone's hands were tied up and their clothes, which used to be gorgeous, were now dirty. Beside this group of people, there were dozens of winged cavalry warriors riding their mounts and moving forward slowly. Behind these people there was a large number of carriages. However, the carriages weren't loaded with people but with looted goods. Sir. When everyone arrived at the foot of the city, the winged cavalry warriors came up to greet them. Was everything all right along the way? Rinpoche asked. Sir, they were very well behaved. Not bad. Did you meet the army from the Protectorate of the South? Sir, there are still a few cities that haven't been cleared along the way, and they will only arrive in a few days. Rinpoche nodded, looked at the uneasy people behind them and said, Release them. He then raised his voice and said, You aren't here as prisoners, but as a sign of friendly coexistence between the people of Tianjin Basin and the aboriginals. The people of Tianjin Basin have many misunderstandings about the aboriginals and the imperial court. I hope that when you return in the future, you can dispel this misunderstanding. Awkward silence. Misunderstanding? There was no misunderstanding at all. Rinpoche didn't mind and continued, I gave you a chance and was lenient, but it doesn't mean that I will always be lenient. After entering the city, be well behaved and know your place. Unless you are stronger than the one hanging at the top of the city wall. Sir Rin, who is that on top of the city wall? Zhang Changkong had been staring at the few people behind Rinpoche since the beginning. He had seen these people before. 4 of them were highly ranked experts in the Lingshan sect. He didn't expect them to be following behind Rinpoche. The other 2 were experts from the hidden village. It seemed like the Lingshan sect in Qingyun sword had surrendered. Who was that on top of the city wall? Based on what Rinpoche said, this person's identity wasn't simple. Spirit Spear Tingyu. I'm sure you have heard of him. Rinpoche sneered. The 4th most powerful expert in the world, Spirit Spear Tingyu? Everyone was shocked. How did Tingyu appear here? How did he die here? Chapter 495. The Three River Basin was the largest plain in Tianjin Basin. It was the granary of Tianjin Basin, where the land was fertile and the population density was the highest. This piece of land only occupied 1/10 of Tianjin Basin, but it supported 1/3 of Tianjin Basin's population. There were a total of 7 cities in this area that dotted the plain like 7 pearls. These 7 pearls were controlled by the 3 major factions. Recently, the 3 major factions had mobilized their troops to this area, causing the people in the Three River Basin to be in a state of panic. They didn't know if there was going to be a war again. A few days later, the news gradually spread, and the people in the Three River Basin knew that there was indeed going to be a war. However, it wasn't between the 3 major factions but against the aboriginals. The south of the city is recruiting soldiers. I heard that the salary is quite high, and they can get 2 taels of silver a month. Fatty, since you have nothing to do, why don't you go and take a look? With your physique, you might be able to make a name for yourself in the army. Even if I'm alive to earn money, I have to be alive to spend it. How many people can survive a war with the barbarians? Those barbarians are all 8 feet tall and have bloody mouths like wild beasts in the mountains. They're not something that you and I can imagine. Just say that you're a coward. I heard that if those barbarians attack, they will massacre the entire city. Many people in the north have been killed, and people are running into the mountains to survive. In my opinion, since we're going to die anyway, we might as well fight for it. Who knows, we might even be able to make a contribution and become a minor official in the future. Massacre the entire city? Is that true? It should be true. Don't you know what those barbarians are like? Besides, many people are saying that. Now, people are in a state of panic and thinking about how to escape if the barbarians attack. If that's the case, we have to fight with our lives on the line. A middle-aged man walked along the street, stopped for a moment, listened to the idle chatter in the alley and continued walking. He didn't know who spread the rumor of a massacre. Although it made people panic, it also aroused the blood of many people. In just half a month, the three major factions recruited many new soldiers. However, the new soldiers who hadn't gone through training would probably be weak in the knees if they encountered the army of the Protectorate of the South. The middle-aged man walked to a mansion in the city and announced. A moment later, a middle-aged man of similar age came out and laughed in surprise. "Junior brother, why are you here? No one will be able to escape such a huge storm. Be it the big fish or the shrimps at the bottom of the water, they were all carried forward by the wind and waves. Since that's the case, why don't we go to the surface of the water to see how spectacular the scenery is?" The middle-aged man said with a smile. "Let's enter the mansion and sit down first." Senior brother laughed. After a while, the two of them sat down and waited for the servant to pour the tea. The senior brother then asked, "Master, how is it? How's the sect?" "Master suffered some injuries and is currently recuperating. As for the sect, don't mention it." The junior brother sighed and said, "Master went to Wu City? What happened in the sect?" "The ancient race is here to ask for our surrender." When they reached the door, the people inside were quarreling incessantly. "I heard that the Hidden Village and Spiritual Mountain sect have surrendered." When the senior brother heard this, he was shocked. The ancient race was actually asking them to surrender? Didn't the ancient race always kill without leaving any survivors? The Hidden Village and Spiritual Mountain sect had surrendered? Qingyun's sword from the Hidden Village and Zhucheng from the Spiritual Mountain sect had been famous in the martial world for decades. Not long ago, Qingyun's sword had even gathered everyone to besiege and kill Qi Zixiao. Such people actually surrendered? Really? The junior brother nodded. "I heard that the person in charge of the ancient race this time isn't Qi Zixiao or Butcher Shiwanya. Then who could it be? I still remember that there was news that Qi Zixiao found a husband who wasn't from the ancient race. It's him? Yes, this person is called Ren Baqian. This time he is the person in charge of the surrender. It is said that he promised to let bygones be bygones as long as the ancient race surrendered. He also promised that the people of Tianjing Basin could go out and live together with the aboriginals in the future." When the senior brother heard this, his expression changed drastically. If this was said, many people would be tempted. "What else do you know, Junior?" This time, it was the people from the Hidden Village and the Lingshan sect who came to the sect. As a result, the sect has been quarreling incessantly for the past few days. Many people think that since Qi Zixiao and the winged cavalry have arrived in Wu City, the three major forces are no match for them no matter what. Furthermore, the other party has promised to let bygones be bygones and let us go out. Otherwise, when the aboriginal army arrives, I'm afraid that the entire sect will be slaughtered. When the senior brother heard this, his expression changed. "What did Master say?" "Master didn't say anything. However, I saw that Master didn't agree, so I wanted to ask Senior for your opinion. After all, Senior has better foresight than all of us." The senior brother gritted his teeth and said, "No matter what, I will not surrender." "I know. Senior, your parents died in the hands of Butcher Shiwanya. The hatred of killing your parents is absolutely irreconcilable." The junior brother nodded. "If they want to surrender, let them do so. In this way, no matter what happens in the future, the sect will be able to preserve its foundation. Since the sect is quarreling, it must be because the other party has conditions for surrendering. Is it because the disciples are not allowed to join the revolutionary army formed by the three major forces?" The senior brother raised his head and asked. "Senior is right." The junior brother smiled and nodded. "Can't they remove our names from the sect?" The senior brother asked again. "This is what the sect is arguing about." The junior brother sighed slightly. "What is there to consider about this? Expel those of us who want to fight from the sect, and the rest of us can just surrender to the north. If the revolutionary army wins with us around, the sect won't be affected and we can be recruited in the future. If the aboriginals win, then the sect will be able to preserve its foundation." The senior brother said disapprovingly. "Senior, do you think we have a chance of winning?" The junior brother asked. "Even if the odds are slim, I'm willing to fight with my life on the line." The senior brother then cupped his hands and said, "Junior, this is a serious matter. I'll go and see the governor first. I'll talk to you when I'm back." "Senior, please wait. Is there anything else, Junior?" "Master has always been concerned about you, so he asked me to bring something for you to protect yourself," the junior brother said. "Thank you for worrying about me, my unfilial disciple." The senior brother felt warmth in his heart when he heard this. He watched as the junior brother untied a cylinder from his waist. This was left behind by Master. It said that it was obtained from Baiji Pavilion in Great Xia. It can shoot out 3 rounds of bone-piercing nails. If you are in danger, you can press it here. Following the junior brother's action, the cylinder inadvertently faced the senior brother, and 3 bone-piercing nails suddenly shot out from the cylinder. Junior you. Before the senior brother could react, he was hit by 3 bone-piercing nails, and blood spurted out from his chest like a fountain. Senior Rinpoche is more vicious than you think. There are 3 earth wheel experts in the sect. As long as one of them joins the revolutionary army, their whole family will be executed. If there are 6 man-wheel experts, as long as 2 of them join, their whole family will be executed. Although there aren't many people in our sect, many of them have entered the army over the years. Unless all of you are killed, the foundation of the sect will not be able to be preserved. The junior brother sighed with a pained look on his face. Did Master send you? The senior brother asked weakly as he lay on the ground with blood dripping from his mouth. Master and the chief aren't willing to surrender. Therefore, the foundation of the sect can't be preserved. If nothing goes wrong, everyone will die. The junior brother continued to sigh. Then why did you? Fortunately, that Sir Rin gave me another way to live. As long as I kill a fellow disciple of the same strength and bring his head to surrender, I can live. That's the proof of my allegiance. I still want to live. Senior brother wants to take revenge and so do I. However, I'm different from your enemy. My enemy is Siekuan, the capital of the southern metropolis. You don't know him, right? Even Master doesn't know him and I haven't told anyone. Therefore, if I surrender, I can live and I can take revenge. Why not? Therefore, I need to borrow a head to prove my loyalty. The people in the sect live together, and if I am discovered, I won't even have the chance to escape. The risk is too great. After thinking about it, I think it's the easiest to kill you. The junior brother said softly, squatted in front of the senior brother and said, You guys have no chance of winning if you fight with those barbarians. Not to mention Qi Zixiao and Shiwanya, how can the 1,500 earth wheel experts of the winged cavalry resist? Senior, you are going to die anyway. Why don't you help me? In the future, there will be someone to visit your grave during festivals. Phew. Phew. The senior brother lay on the ground, panting and spitting out blood. The bone-piercing nails had pierced his lungs, making him unable to speak, and his eyes gradually lost their luster. Chapter 496. Commander, Liuqing's Cloud Cavalry officer Zhang Guo was assassinated and his head was taken away. Although the city was searched, no one was found. It is said that it was his junior who did it. In the residence of the warlord of Shuiyang City, a middle-aged man sat in the seat of honor and listened to the report. This man was Siekuan, the commander of the southern metropolis, and he was also the leader of the southern metropolis. Among the 3 major powers in Tianjin Basin, the North Alliance had the highest leader, the southern metropolis had the commander, and the Green Bellflower was led by a lady with the Flower Queen as their leader. It's because of that news again. These people deserve to die. Siekuan slammed the table angrily. Inform everyone of this news. No matter who they see, whether they are old friends or fellow disciples from afar, even if they are blood relatives, they must be on guard. Everyone. As a result, everyone will be in a panic. Although spreading the news of the massacre has caused instability in the hearts of the people, it is only the civilians who are panicking. This has aroused the morale of many civilians and made our recruitment a lot smoother. However, this incident has caused all the officials to feel uneasy. How can we do anything if we are always on guard against each other? Someone stepped forward and said, So what if you say it? If this continues, I'm afraid that there will be more casualties. Moreover, how can this matter be hidden? I'm afraid that many people know about it before you and me. Instead of hiding it, it is better to tell everyone so that they don't die at the hands of their fellow disciples or relatives. My heart aches. Pass down the order, Siekuan said in a deep voice. Also, offer a large reward for those who sneak in. Inform all the sections. The other party's message is very clear. If they don't surrender now, they will be massacred. Either they surrender or they join the volunteer army. There is no third option, Siekuan said. Finally, send more experts to guard the Wang estuary. Those who want to surrender to the north, kill them. The situation in the North Alliance, the Green Bellflower, and the Southern Metropolis was similar. Rinpoche's move caused quite a stir in the 3 major powers. From time to time, there were news of experts who had joined the army being assassinated by fellow disciples, and there were even cases of internal strife. This made everyone even more anxious and their morale dropped significantly. In Wu City, Rinpoche was sitting in the main hall with 6 people standing in 2 rows below him. Jingyu, Jiang Boding, Zuoleng, and Zhong Hexing were from the Lingshan sect. Among them, Zuoleng was Zuocheng's nephew. The other two were Zhu Nong and Xie Yinbing. They were from the hidden village and had met Rinpoche more than once. The six of them looked at the tip of the spear sticking out of Rinpoche's head with a look of astonishment on their faces. It was indeed rare to see a spear tip sticking out of his head. How are those people now? Rinpoche crossed his legs, fanned himself with one hand, and took a sip of iced coke with the other. The cola bottle was right next to his hand. It was hot these 2 days, so it was better to drink iced cola. As for ice, it was also easy to make. Saltpeter could be found everywhere. Sir, most of them are sincere in seeking refuge with you. Zuocheng cupped his hands and said, most of them, but there's still a small number of them who aren't sincere. Rinpoche raised his head slightly. Everyone's hearts tightened. However, this is normal. There's no knowing what's in a man's heart. With so many people, it's hard to guarantee that there are some who can't see the situation clearly and don't know when to advance or retreat. Inform the two gentlemen to take action when it's time to do so. You can't be soft-hearted now. If it's my turn to arrange for people to take action, kill without mercy. Yes. Zuocheng responded. Also, do you know that little Baldy? Get 2 people to follow him and stay away from him. Just don't let anything happen to him and ignore everything else, Rinpoche said again. Yes. Is there anything else? Sir, there's news that the entire Shaoshan sect has surrendered and is rushing to Wu City. Not bad. When they arrive, bring them to me. After all, we still have to show our sincerity. Rinpoche nodded. He then waved his hand and said, you may leave. After everyone left, Rinpoche opened the collar of his shirt. It's really hot today and making me irritable. He got up and went to the Empress's room in the courtyard next door. Greetings, Your Majesty. Oh. The Empress looked up at Rinpoche before lowering her head to look at the book in her hand. She had nothing to do these days, so she casually flipped through some of the ancient books and records that she had plundered from the various sections. Rinpoche took out an antique wooden box that exuded a strange fragrance and placed it on the table. Your Majesty, I went to the warehouse to take a look this morning and found this thing. If it was in the hands of someone else, it would be a waste. Although it's not good enough for you, there aren't many things in this world that are good enough for you. This thing is barely good enough for you. The Empress raised her head and looked at the box. Rinpoche opened the box, and the item inside immediately appeared in front of her. It was a golden hairpin with an egg-sized ruby carved at the end. It was a picture of a phoenix spreading its wings and about to fly. Not only was the phoenix carved very lifelike, but the ruby also seemed to have flames sealed within it. As long as light shone on it, it would emit an extremely magnificent light. The Empress's eyes immediately lit up when she saw it. She took it out and looked at it carefully. There's another characteristic of this item. Rinpoche smiled as he took it from the Empress's hand. With a wave of it in the air, a loud and clear clang-clang sound was immediately heard. It sounded like the chirping of birds and also like the sound of stringed instruments. It is said that the cry of a phoenix is like this, Rinpoche said as he put the hairpin back in the Empress's hand. The Empress was even more delighted when she saw this. She put down the book in her hand and played with the hairpin. After a while, Rinpoche saw that the Empress's interest had waned and said, "Why don't I put it on for Your Majesty?" The Empress spread out her hand. Rinpoche picked up the hairpin and walked to the Empress's back. He gently touched the Empress's fine black hair and took off the hairpin. Her hair immediately fell down like a waterfall. Rinpoche held the 2 hairpins in his hand and fell into deep thought. Why did her hair fall down after he took it off? How did she tie her hair up? The Empress sat there for a long time, but Rinpoche still didn't move at all. This made the Empress a little impatient and her fingers lightly tapped on the table twice. After thinking about it, Your Majesty's bare face is already devastatingly beautiful. Why do you need this thing to embellish Your Majesty? Rinpoche walked in front of the Empress and said seriously as he placed the hairpin back into the box. I feel that Your Majesty's current demeanor is already flawless and you don't need it anymore. So, you said you don't need it after you spread my hair down? The Empress wasn't moved by Rinpoche's flowery words at all. She raised her eyebrows and asked, I feel that Your Majesty is already the most beautiful scenery in the world. Adding or removing even a little bit would destroy this perfection. You were standing behind me just now, so I could only see your hair. Bang. Ouch. After a while, Rinpoche collapsed on the chair with a bloody nose and swollen face. It was still cooler where the Empress was. Not only was there a fan blowing ice cubes, but there was also the cold, murderous aura that the Empress emitted from time to time, making people feel comfortable from head to toe. The next day it was still the same room. Zhuo Qing strode into the room with a bag and threw it on the ground. 5 or 6 heads rolled out. Sir Rin, these are the ones who aren't well behaved at the moment. Zhuo Qing cupped his fists and said calmly. His gaze was calm. The lives of the entire Lingshan sect and the future of the sect were in the hands of the person in front of him. Even if one of them was his disciple, he had no choice but to be ruthless. He had already given them a chance, but Zhuoleng's message yesterday made him know that he couldn't wait any longer. Mr. Zhuo is a smart person. You know what is important, what can be done and what can't be done. I'm most at ease with you. As Rin Baqin spoke, he glanced at the heads on the ground and said, it's just that some people aren't that smart. Not only are they courting death but they also want to drag others down with them. This kind of person is like a rat's poop spoiling a bowl of soup. It's good that Mr. Zhuo knows what to do. I will have to trouble Mr. Zhuo to pay more attention in the future. At this moment Rin Baqin was more at ease with Zhuo Qing. Now Zhuo Qing was completely tied to him and there was no way out. With such a person taking care of things, Rin Baqin could save a lot of trouble. At the very least, the winged cavalry warriors wouldn't be able to tell if someone was uneasy or not. On the contrary, it was easier for the Lingshan sect to detect this. I still have to ask for a favor from you. One of these people is my disciple, and I hope Sir Rin can allow me to bury him properly, Zhuo Qing said. Chapter 497. In the following days Wu City began to bustle with activity. First, the reinforcements from the Protectorate of the South finally arrived. 5,000 soldiers swept through almost half of the north. Upon entering Tianjing Basin, the reinforcements split into 5 teams and attacked at the same time. Thanks to Rin Baqin's previous arrangements, many cities directly opened their gates and surrendered. This reduced casualties and saved a lot of time. For cities that surrendered directly, the reinforcements passed through the city without stopping, leaving only a few dozen people to guard the city. After all, a few dozen man-wheel experts were considered a formidable force in an ordinary city. Even the elite soldiers of Great Xia needed 10 times the number of soldiers to contend with them, let alone these defenders with bone knives. Even if something happened, as long as no earthwheel experts or above attacked, some of these soldiers would be able to escape. When Ren Baqin returned from the Golden Ring residence, the winged cavalry warriors that he sent out almost wiped out all the earthwheel experts and above in the north. Even if there were any experts who escaped, they were now hiding in the dark and didn't dare to show themselves. There were also a few cities that resisted resolutely. The separated troops gathered together and attacked. After breaking through the city, all the officials were killed, and the air in the entire city was filled with the smell of blood. As for the chaos that occurred after they left because there were no officials, they didn't care. How to settle the city down was a problem that others had to consider. Killing all those who dared to resist was what they should do. Under such circumstances, it took a full 40 days for them to reach Wu City, which they could have reached in 15 days. They also wiped out the scattered resistance forces in the north. The person who led the reinforcements was an acquaintance of Ren Baqin, Hong Cheng. He was Hong Wu's son and Hong Xian's father. Previously, during the battle with Great Xia in the north, Hong Wu had led the reinforcements from the Protectorate of the South to the north. Ren Baqin had met him before, and this was the second time he had seen him. Wu City was just a small city, and the arrival of more than 4,000 reinforcements almost filled the city. At the same time, the problem was the lack of food in Wu City. Previously, the 1,000 soldiers and 800 winged cavalry warriors had eaten up almost all the provisions in Wu City. Even the rations of the defenders were looted. Now that this batch of reinforcements had arrived, Wu City was completely out of food. Your Majesty, there's not enough food in the city. We can only last for 3 days at most, Shi Wanya told the Empress. In my opinion, everyone in the city can only keep 5 days' worth of rations. The rest must be handed over. It should be enough to make up for a week's worth of rations. If we only send them out from Wu City, we'll be forcing the civilians to die. Even with 5 days of rations, he could only live for about 10 days. Looking at the crops outside the city, it will take at least a month before they can be harvested. Ren Baqin shook his head. Does Sir Ren have any ideas? Wu City has to provide grain. However, Wu City was not the only place to send supplies. Every city in the north had to hand over 2,000 dawn of rations, which was 100 carts. They would be responsible for their own personnel and losses. In this way, 30 cities can have 60 days of rations. 60 days is enough to quell the rebels in the south. It doesn't matter even if it's not enough, Ren Baqin said. As long as they took down the 3 rivers, there would be a large amount of rations there. In this world, 1 stone weighed about 50 kilograms. 2,000 stones weighed about 100,000 kilograms, which was barely enough to feed 6,000 soldiers and 800 winged cavalry warriors for 2 days. There was a lot of grain in Tianjin Basin but very little livestock. Ordinary soldiers could only eat 1 or 2 kilograms of millet a day, while the winged cavalry warriors needed 25 kilograms. These days, the smoke from kitchen chimneys in the city had never stopped. It had to be said that the Aboriginals' strong fighting power was supported by their huge appetite. Previously, when they fought with Great Xia, there were many livestock in the north and abundant meat. This wasn't obvious. After all, ordinary meat could provide 5 times more energy than the rations. Now that they had arrived in Tianjin Basin, this problem was completely exposed. Rinpoche only wanted to say that the Aboriginals were really a bunch of foodies. The nearest cities, Sifeng and Chindi, will take less than 2 days to reach Wu City. The further cities, Mingqing and Xinyu, will take less than 3 days to reach here. The rations from these 4 cities will be able to last for 8 days. With this time, they would be able to deliver the rations to the faraway cities. Therefore, there is no need to consider the issue of rations. After Rinpoche finished speaking, the Empress nodded. As for the issue of rations, do as Principal Rin said. In addition, transfer a batch of livestock from Gu City over. Before the war, they have to eat their fill. Otherwise, they will be weak, the Empress said faintly. Yes. Shiwanya replied. In addition, we have stayed here for too long and should move south. Now that the rebels have retreated and gathered in the Three Rivers Valley, they probably want to rely on the Wang Estuary and Dulong Ridge, these 2 strategic locations to fight against the army of the imperial court. They have abandoned 6 cities between the Three Rivers Valley and Wu City: Lingdong, Jiangbei, Liugo, Jinsha, Pingjiang, and Hannan. Just the day before yesterday, the garrisons of these 6 cities have already been withdrawn. Presumably, the people of these 6 cities are in chaos and suffering. They are looking forward to the army of the imperial court, hoping to see Her Majesty's face as soon as possible and rescue them as soon as possible. Now the time is almost right. In my opinion, we should first take down these 6 cities and face the rebels across the Three Rivers Valley. This will increase the pressure on them, Rinpoche said. He had heard about the withdrawal of the garrisons of these 6 cities from the practitioners who had rushed to Wu City in the past 2 days. He had to admit that these practitioners were really useful at times. Rinpoche was even considering using these practitioners to form a cavalry battalion. Whether it was in Tianjin Basin or against the other countries, they would be useful. Shiwanya scratched his head. Looking forward? How can you tell, Principal Rin? Why do I see that they are so scared? Shiwanya pointed at the spear tip and the metal chain on Rinpoche's head and said subconsciously, Sir Rin, they have appeared again. It's fine. They are just kids who find everything new and can't stay put. They will be fine after some time. Rinpoche didn't care. A heaven-grade weapon would only gain consciousness after the death of its owner. The newly born consciousness was like a baby, looking at everything new and active. This was very normal. A kitten or puppy would still sniff around. It would be fine after a long time. Didn't the metal chain rarely appear now? Shiwanya stared at the iron chain wrapped around the tip of the spear. It looked like a whip. After some discussion, Shiwanya sent people to inform the cities to prepare provisions. Rinpoche looked for Zhucheng and asked him to deploy manpower and set off with 2,000 soldiers to suppress the riots in the cities that had lost all the officials and garrisons. At the same time, he would do a good job of pacifying them. Chapter 498. A few days later, the Empress's carriage arrived at Jiangbei City. Jiangbei City was the last city to enter the Sanjiang district. The Wang Estuary was 80 kilometers south of the city, and the Sanjiang district was to the south of the Wang Estuary. The winged cavalry entered the city first, followed by the Empress's carriage. There were traces of chaos in the city. Not far away, there were charred houses and bloodstains that hadn't been wiped off. After all the guards and officials left, it was normal for there to be chaos in the city. Those civilians who didn't know much were fearful. A little spark could start a prairie fire. At this time, the evilness of human nature would be revealed. This was unavoidable since ancient times. This was a part of human nature. When the Shaoshan sect arrived at Jiangbei, the city began to show signs of chaos. Rinpoche was 4 days late when he sent his men. It was said that when the army and the Lingshan sect arrived, the city was already in chaos. The shops were basically smashed, burned, and looted, especially shops that sold necessities such as food and salt. Many civilians in the city were killed or injured in the chaos. Previously, a group of people escaped from the city, and the army killed another group to suppress the riot. This city, which originally had a population of 100,000, was only left with 60,000 when the Empress and her men entered the city. What are they doing? Who allowed them to be here? The Empress sat in the imperial chariot and looked at the commoners who were standing by the side of the street with their heads bowed and shivering. They are welcoming you just like what you saw in Lan City, Rinpoche said while holding a wine cup in one hand. Rinpoche said as he held a wine glass in one hand. As for the person who arranged this, it should be someone from the Lingshan sect, right? The people of Lan City are my people. They sincerely support me and welcome me. And these people? The Empress said faintly. These people are also your Majesty's people, Rinpoche said faintly as he looked at the civilians who were fearful. Your Majesty, if a ruler treats his subjects like his own hands and feet, his subjects will treat him like a confidant. If a ruler treats his subjects like dogs and horses, his subjects will treat him like a fellow countryman. If a ruler treats his subjects like dirt, his subjects will treat him like an enemy. These people are still fearful. As long as they can live and work in peace and contentment in your country, they will sincerely support you like the people of Lan City in the future. Who said this? It makes sense, the Empress praised. It was said by the ancients. He said a lot of things and they were all very reasonable, Rinpoche replied after thinking for a while. In the future tell me more about him. To be able to say something like that, I'm sure he's not an ordinary person. As the Empress spoke, she looked at the commoners. I don't really like them. Whether they like it or not, they are a part of Dayo. The reason why His Majesty disliked them was because they were restless. However, there was also a reason for this. Among them, there were people who kept instilling certain ideas into them. In fact, as long as they are appeased and mentally dominated, they can do a lot of things. After a few decades, a new generation of young people would grow up, and they would become His Majesty's true subjects. Furthermore, these people were not living a good life. They were just trying their best to survive. As long as they can live and work in peace and contentment, I think most of them won't have any other thoughts. Just like the people on both sides, they had just experienced chaos and pain. Now that the army had pacified the city, they could return to their peaceful lives. Although they seem to be afraid now, that's only because they don't understand His Majesty. How would His Majesty know that some of them aren't rejoicing in their hearts? Rinpoche poured the wine into his mouth, held an empty cup and praised, "This flower wine is really good. Although it's like a raging fire, it has a sweet and glutinous taste and a hint of floral fragrance." Qing Yuan and Hong Yuan, who were beside him, glared at him and unwillingly poured the wine for him. The two of them had painstakingly picked many kinds of flowers to brew this wine for Her Majesty, but this guy had drunk so much of it in the past 2 days. What happens to these people is something you need to consider, the Empress said faintly. She wasn't good at this kind of thing. Since Rinpoche could do it well, she would leave it to him. He also needed some achievements to establish himself in the imperial court. Although he had done many things before, nothing was more dazzling than pacifying Tianjin Basin. If he couldn't do it well, he would kill all these people. The Empress was staying at the warlord's residence in Jiangbei. However, it seemed like the warlord's residence had also suffered a calamity. Many places had traces of being burned, and some of the decorations in the residence had also been swept away. Even though the people from the Lingshan sect who had arrived earlier had already arranged for people to renovate the residence and made a batch of items to decorate it, the patchwork of things in the residence made it look even more shabby. It gave people the feeling that everything in the residence was out of place. For example, the flowers in the courtyard that had just been dug out from an unknown place looked like weeds. There were also a few chairs and tables in the hall. One of the chairs had some color differences and its style was different as well. It was obvious that it was patchwork. As for the inside of the room, there was no need to talk about it. The bright red and green quilts made Rinpoche wonder if those people had different aesthetic standards. Your Majesty, please take a rest here first. I will get someone to send bedding over later. Rinpoche walked around the room and retreated. After bidding farewell to the Empress, he summoned the people from the Lingshan sect. Are there any people from the south in the city these few days? What's the situation in the south? Rinpoche asked. Sir, dozens of people have arrived in the past few days and are waiting to be summoned. As for the south, the rebel army has arranged for many experts near the Wang estuary to intercept and kill those who came to seek refuge with you. It is said that the same situation is happening at Mount Dulong, and many people have been killed. Rebel army? Rinpoche squinted at him and said, Your thinking is very dangerous. Sir, it's my fault. It's the rebel army. They are the rebel army, but they call themselves the rebel army. It was a slip of the tongue, and I hope you won't blame me, the man said as he broke out in a cold sweat. Remember, we are officials and they are bandits. You are working for me and Her Majesty. Always remember your identity, Rinpoche reminded him again. Yes. How many people were sent by the rebel army to intercept them? How strong are they? Rinpoche asked slowly. There are more than 100 people at the Wang estuary, mainly from the Bamboo Mountain sect, Shaoqing Temple, and the Yang sect. Among them there are more than 10 earthwheel experts. The Mount Dulong should be guarded by people from the Mengsing Pavilion and the Yujiang Gang. In addition, there are thousands of soldiers stationed at each place. However, that was news from 3 days ago. Now that the Imperial Army is here, they should know about it and there should be some changes. Got it? You may leave. Rinpoche waved his hand and pondered for a long time after he left. If the winged cavalry were to directly crush them, the other party might be unaware of something and might suffer some casualties. Now that the winged cavalry had suffered casualties, not to mention the Empress, even he felt distressed. Furthermore, it was known that there were more than 200,000 rebel soldiers in the south. At present, there were only 6,000 aboriginal soldiers here, including 800 winged cavalry warriors. Even if the other party were all Huskies, 200,000 Huskies wouldn't be easy to deal with. Rinpoche thought about it and called Zhucheng and Qingyun Sword over. Sirs, the Wang estuary and Mount Dulong are currently guarded by the experts sent by the rebel army. Those righteous and chivalrous people are trapped in the 3 rivers and may be wiped out by the rebel army at any time. I would like to ask the 2 of you to select some experts from the city to check out these 2 places and report back to me. This is an opportunity that I have painstakingly fought for the 2 of you. According to Her Majesty's instructions, the army will directly crush them and crush them to pieces. Chapter 499. Let's go. Zhang Changkong waved his hand at Painting Fairy Zhang Kaixien and the others in the courtyard. At this moment he was carrying a 9-ringed broadsword on his back. The 4 people beside him were the outer sanctum deacon Ling Ziquan, the inner sanctum deacon Su Ming, the deputy steward Lu Jing, and the vault steward Zhan Qiang. They were also carrying similar weapons. Master, why don't I go with you? Painting Fairy asked. Stay behind and take care of Kaixien. This trip is just to investigate and there won't be much danger. Kaixien, I'll bring back some meat for you. Zhang Changkong waved his hand. After saying this, Zhang Changkong felt somewhat miserable. He actually had to bring back some meat for his daughter on the way back. He was the chief of the Golden Ring residence after all, yet he had been reduced to such a state. However, even the winged cavalry warriors had to eat rice stubble 6 times a day. Naturally, they wouldn't have any good meals. It was already good enough that they could eat their fill. Rice stubble was a common food in Tianjin Basin. It was somewhat similar to millet on earth. It wasn't delicious, but it was abundant. Don't worry, madam. We will definitely send the chief back safe and sound. Ling Ziquan and the others raised their thumbs, index fingers and pinkies. This gesture represented a promise. Thank you for your hard work. Painting Fairy bowed in return. Let's go. The 5 of them mounted their mounts and traveled along the long street to the south of the city. When they arrived at the city gate, they threw a sign over for the soldiers to check. After leaving the city and traveling 3 kilometers south, they saw more than 20 people standing or sitting in groups of 2 or 3. Greetings everyone. I'm late. Zhang Changkong scanned the crowd and saw people from the Lingshan sect, the 9-Blade sect, the Shaoshan sect, the General sect and a few other small sections. Other than the Lingshan sect and the Golden Ring residents, the rest were small sects that usually only had 1 or 2 earthwheel experts. If this was in the past, the status of both parties would naturally be different. However now, other than the Lingshan sect, which had clung onto Rinpoche's thigh, there was no difference between the other sections. As Zhang Changkong and the others arrived, everyone got up from the ground. It seemed like the 5 of them were the last ones. Everyone is here. Let's set off. Su Xing, the chief of the Lingshan sect, who was dressed in embroidered clothes, announced the arrival of everyone. Is Seniors not coming? Someone asked. With a spirit wheel expert in charge, even if there was an ambush at the mouth of the Wang estuary, everyone wouldn't be worried. Uncle Master Zhuo will also go, but he will not show himself. The investigation will mainly depend on everyone here. When everyone arrives, please be careful. Do not be careless, Su Xing warned the crowd. It is said that there are more than a dozen earthwheel experts there, and their skills aren't inferior to those of us here. That was news from a few days ago, and there might be other experts around now. In addition, there are about 5,000 soldiers on the mountain. If they surround you, it will be difficult for anyone below the spirit wheel level to escape. This time we're mainly here to investigate. If there's no need, don't fight with anyone. Evacuate immediately if anything happens. Sect Master Su, don't worry. We're not reckless people. Everyone said. In fact, none of them wanted to fight. It wasn't that he was afraid of the battle, but that they had been sitting at the same table discussing how to kill Qi Zixiao. But now they had sided with the imperial court. When facing the other party, he always felt that he was in the wrong. When everyone headed to the Wang estuary, Rinpochen was writing and drawing on a piece of paper. What are you writing? The Empress looked over and saw that it was written in simplified Chinese, with the words, embroidered uniform guards written at the top. I feel that it's a pity not to make use of these people. In the past, the imperial court didn't know much about anything outside of Dayo because the aboriginals were more suited for killing enemies on the battlefield and weren't good at infiltrating and investigating. Furthermore, the aboriginals were too easy to recognize. Even a blind person could tell that they were from Dayo based on their figures and expressions. Now that we have these people, we can cast our net and at least have some understanding of the movements of other countries. We can also make use of these people to control Tianjin Basin and the Yun Nation province, Rinpochen explained. The Yun Nation province? Or the Protectorate of the East Cloud. When the Yun Nation is conquered, Your Majesty can call it whatever you want, Rinpochen said. As for the Yun Nation, it was still the Yun Nation now, but it wouldn't be in the future. Neither he nor the Empress doubted whether Dayo could conquer the Yun Nation or not. Decades ago, if it wasn't for the fact that the former emperor didn't want to occupy the Yun Nation and only wanted to seize it, the Yun Nation would have been destroyed. Why are they called the embroidered uniform guards? The Empress asked curiously. In fact, their duties overlap with those of the Department of Inspection. However, this team is made up of martial arts experts who have surrendered and is different from the departments of the imperial court. Therefore, they have been given another name. At present, it's just a concept. If Your Majesty doesn't like it, you can call them the East Faction Guards, the West Faction Guards, or the Department of Security, Rinpochen explained simply. Embroidered uniform guards, this name isn't bad. The Empress nodded slightly and asked, do you think these people are trustworthy? He stood up from the ground and went into the room to take a look. He discovered that there were still some objects left behind by the other party. What's this? Rinpochen looked at it for a long time. Half of the object was destroyed. The front half was gone and only the back half, a seat and a round plate were left. He couldn't see anything. He carefully thought about what happened. The Empress was changing clothes in the room and the other party came in through the window. Damn it. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to tear them into pieces. Rinpochen gritted his teeth for a long time. However, he thought that he was on the second floor now and the other party came in through the air. This thing still had a seat and a round plate. Was it a flying motorcycle? Your Majesty, who came in? Rinpochen asked. It should be a woman who isn't even 20 years old, the Empress said faintly. A woman who isn't even 20 years old? Rinpochen started to feel that something was wrong. What are the people outside like? What did they say? Even though the Empress was a little impatient, she still roughly explained it to him. Rinpochen was speechless. He finally understood that this wasn't an attack, but a traffic accident. However, this traffic accident came directly to the second floor of his house, and the Empress happened to be changing clothes. Just now, the Empress actually kicked an unconscious girl out of the second floor. Rinpochen thought about it. The Empress was always right and there was no other possibility. If there was, then according to the previous rule, the Empress was always right. Knowing that the other party wasn't an enemy agent, Rinpochen didn't know if he was relieved or disappointed. Ever since he reached the man-wheel level, he didn't even have a chance to show his face. As for the other party's revenge, he could just leave it to the Messier 87 department. Even though there were rich people in this area, who could be more powerful than the government? Rinpochen put this matter aside and recalled the scene he saw before he passed out. Even though the Empress had used her arm to block it, it seemed like a little bit was exposed. He seemed to have seen a smear of pink, but he wasn't sure if it was an illusion. Rinpochen pondered and recalled that he couldn't miss such an important scene just because he was unconscious. What disrespectful thoughts are you having? The Empress asked coldly. How is that possible? Rinpochen laughed. I'll give the Messier 87 department a call. Rinpochen walked back to his room, leaned against the wall and continued to recall. Did he see it or not? At that time the Empress was wearing a pair of black lace panties. Ren Baqin bought her underwear. She only had panties, and then there were the skin-tight shorts from that world, which were similar to safety pants. The enchanting and elastic body of the Empress, who was wearing panties, was half blocked. Ren Baqin rubbed his nose. The weather had been dry recently and he was a little hot. If you have any wild thoughts again, I'll beat you to death. The Empress's voice was transmitted to his ears through the wall. Ren Baqin laughed mischievously. The Empress couldn't beat him to death, but if she were to embarrass him, he was afraid that he would be beaten up. Speaking of which, his strength hadn't improved in other aspects, but his ability to withstand beatings had improved a lot. If it was before he entered the man-wheel level, he would have been sent to the hospital again. Ren Baqin gave Yang Sen a call and told him about what had happened just now. Sir, can you stop stirring up trouble? Yang Sen said helplessly. I'll get someone to check first. You should be content that he's still alive. Ren Baqin grinned. Under those circumstances, the Empress was already very lucky that she didn't kill him. After hanging up the phone, Ren Baqin walked out of the room and saw the Empress standing in front of his messy window. The Empress raised her eyebrows and said, "They still have people watching. They really don't know what's good for them." She hadn't noticed before but now realized that there were actually people hiding in the shade of a tree in the distance. Your Majesty, don't bother about them. As Ren Baqin spoke, he looked at the back of the Empress. His gaze moved from her fine black hair to her smooth shoulders, and then continued downwards. Wherever Ren Baqin's gaze stopped, the Empress's skin would have small goosebumps making her feel itchy. Have you seen enough? The Empress turned around and said angrily, Your Majesty, do you want to dance? Ren Baqin asked on a whim. He stepped forward, held the Empress's hand and pulled her downstairs. The Empress allowed him to hold her hand and followed his footsteps. After a while the classic canon was played in the living room. Ren Baqin put the Empress's hands on his shoulders and put his hands on her waist. The warmth of their bodies was transmitted through their thin clothes to their palms. I really can't imagine how terrible it would be if I didn't meet your Majesty. Ren Baqin gently moved his feet and looked straight into the Empress's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, he was stepped on by the Empress. It's okay, it doesn't hurt. Ren Baqin ignored the pain in his toes and said with a face full of joy, Fortunately, that kind of thing will never happen. The Empress looked at Ren Baqin's smile and felt her heart beating wildly. She exerted more strength in her fingers and slowed down her steps. Even after such a long time, she still felt a little flustered every time they had such intimate contact. At first, this uncontrollable emotion made her want to kill him, but now she began to enjoy this feeling. This feeling wasn't bad. He was stepped on again. It's okay, it doesn't hurt, Ren Baqin said to himself as he moved his toes. The two of them felt each other's warmth in the music. Ren Baqin moved his face forward and gently kissed the Empress's lips, feeling the warmth that seeped into his heart. The Empress opened her eyes and looked straight at him. Her eyes were filled with tenderness. The tips of her ears and cheeks began to warm up. Another kick, Ren Baqin. It doesn't hurt, it really doesn't hurt. Amidst the music, the two of them rotated gently. Ren Baqin whispered in the Empress's ear and moved his hands from the Empress's waist to her back. The edge of one palm felt amazing elasticity while the other wrapped around the Empress's back and squeezed the two of them together. His chest also felt a touch of elasticity. The Empress's hands were unknowingly wrapped around Ren Baqin's neck. Her face was full of embarrassment. Chapter 501. Ren Baqin was lying on the edge of the swimming pool, drinking iced fruit juice while scratching his feet, or rather rubbing his toes. 3 of his toes were visibly swollen like 3 carrots, but they were a little short. Ren Baqin was looking forward to it. Just now, he took advantage of the passionate atmosphere to persuade the Empress to change into the swimsuit that he had prepared for her. He was looking forward to seeing the Empress's figure in a swimsuit. As the saying goes, unobtainable is the best and unobtainable is the most tempting. It's like a cat scratching itchy. Especially for a person like the Empress. She was usually ice cold, but today her eyes were filled with affection. Furthermore, she had changed into her swimsuit to show off her figure. Ren Baqin felt that it was enough to make him happy. Strength and power were the best packaging for a man. Sometimes it was the same for a woman. For women like the Empress and Li Yuanzhu, even if they weren't exceptionally beautiful and only had ordinary looks, it was enough to make people's hearts flutter. If she had a peerless elegance, then not many men would be able to resist such a temptation. If there was such a man, he would either be gay or a eunuch. Ren Baqin rubbed his toes. When he heard the door open, he immediately turned his head. First, a pair of beautiful legs appeared in front of Rinpoche. In his mind, the empress in a bikini appeared, and his heart began to beat faster. The weather was dry and he had to be careful of internal heat. He drank a mouthful of fruit juice to calm himself down. However, Rinpoche's eyes widened very quickly when he saw the empress walking in with a white bath towel wrapped around her. The white bath towel was just below her buttocks, revealing her fair legs, smooth shoulders and alluring collarbones. The weather was dry, he would definitely be on fire. Slurp, slurp. Rinpoche drank half a glass of fruit juice in one breath and felt a little cooler. The empress glanced at Rinpoche, walked to his side and sat down. Your Majesty, aren't you going to test the water? Rinpoche passed another glass of fruit juice to her. Not interested, the empress replied faintly. Her face had regained its previous coldness, but her voice was much gentler. That layer of coldness was like a layer of shell. Two people in an indoor swimming pool, not swimming and not being able to bask in the sun. Seems a little silly, Rinpoche said after some thought. Then he felt himself flying, dancing in the air and plunging into the water with a splash. That way he wouldn't look so stupid. The empress smirked. The moment Rinpoche entered the water, he felt his strength, balance and calmness disappear. The fear of being surrounded by water resurfaced in his heart. After tossing and turning in the water for a long time, it finally stood up and spat out a stream of water. If he were to drown in a 1-meter pool, that would be too depressing. Rinpoche leaned against the side of the pool and raised his head to look at the empress. From this angle, it was a pity that the empress was crossing her legs and couldn't see anything. Rinpoche rolled his eyes, raised his hand, and a handful of water flew toward the empress. Then, the water flew back and forth and hit Rinpoche's face. Seeing that the layer of ice on the empress's face had melted, the smile on her face widened. Your Majesty, come down and give it a try? Soaking in the water for a while in this weather is simply too comfortable. Rinpoche said with a comfortable look on his face. When the empress heard what Rinpoche said, her heart was moved. She got up from the reclining chair, leaped and landed in the middle of the pool. She stretched out her hand and slapped it downwards. He swore that he saw a tsunami. It was as if there was a tsunami in the entire pool. All the water in the pool soared into the sky and hit the surrounding walls and ceiling. Countless water droplets splashed in all directions, and Rinpoche couldn't even open his eyes. He could hear the sound of water crashing against the walls. When Rinpoche opened his eyes, he was dumbstruck to see that the water in the pool had decreased by half. The empress was wrapped in a bath towel, sitting in the pool and leaning against the wall. Soaking in the bath? He turned his head and looked around, only to see water everywhere outside the pool. The reclining chair was gone. The juice was gone. The table was gone. The speaker in the corner was probably damaged as well. Your Majesty? Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The empress had a teasing look on her face. I know what you are thinking, but I won't let you see it. However, Rinpoche could finally dog paddle in the half-filled pool. If he could still drown in this, he might as well drown. It was too embarrassing. He dog paddled all the way to the empress's side. As the water outside the pool fell back into the pool, the water level in the pool rose, and Rinpoche had no choice but to stand up. However, the empress actually maintained her previous sitting posture and floated in the water. If one looked closely, they would see that the empress's fingers were constantly tapping downwards, which was why she was able to float in the water. Your Majesty, you can't swim? Rinpoche suddenly thought of a problem. Previously, he had seen the empress jump from a cliff that was 100 meters high into the water before coming back up. As such, he had never thought that she couldn't swim. However, at this moment he suddenly felt that this possibility was quite high. The empress rolled her eyes at him and waved her hand in the water. Rinpoche felt that he saw a tsunami again, washing him from one end of the pool to the other. Well, I can't afford to offend you even if I can't swim. The two of them stayed in the pool for more than an hour before coming out. The empress walked out with water dripping from her body. When she reached the door, the bath towel on her body fell off. Rinpoche widened his eyes as he looked at the empress's bare back and the outline of her bikini. Then a door blocked the empress's figure. Is this a benefit? Rinpoche's heart was beating rapidly. I'm having so much fun here that I don't miss home. Suwon and the like, to hell with it. It seemed like Her Majesty was in a good mood this time around. Let's play for 2 more days. In a spacious office, an old man with white hair and beard sat on the sofa. Boss, I found it. A young man wearing glasses walked to the old man's side and placed a stack of papers beside him. The owner's name is Ren Baqian, and the lady's name is Qi Zixiao. Ren Baqian's parents are ordinary people who graduated from SY University. 3 years ago he was very ordinary and was just an ordinary employee of a small company. Later on he cooperated with a businessman with the surname Chen in S City. That 1,000 gold medical was established by them. Another thing to note is that he was once wanted together with Qi Zixiao. The reason for being wanted was because he killed a businessman with the surname Jean and his family of more than 10 people. After that, he and Qi Zixiao escaped from the country. Later on it was unknown how they came back, but the wanted order was revoked. Combined with the phone call that you received previously, he must have hooked up with someone in the country. However, we haven't found out who this backer is. But from this point of view, the other party is a vicious and merciless person. Even though that businessman with the surname Jean had a background in the underworld, he was considered extremely daring in the current situation in the country. As for that Qi Zixiao, there's very little information. Other than the fact that he was once wanted, there's no other information. As the old man looked at the information in his hands and listened to the young man's narration, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. His granddaughter had already fainted after crashing into their house, and they actually threw her down from the second floor. This was a huge feud. If he didn't take revenge, others would think that he was weak and easy to bully. Even though he didn't know how the other party got a ministerial official to call him, the other party didn't even show his face. Did they think that this would make him forget about this matter? So what if he had a backer? At his position he didn't need to care so much anymore. Chapter 502. Boss, do you really want to do this? The young man wearing glasses bowed in front of the old man and asked. Go and arrange it. In business we will naturally use business methods. Outside of business we will use other methods. The old man said. Since the other party is vicious and merciless, we can't give him the chance to retaliate. Yes. I need an accident. Understood. The old man nodded slightly. Since the other party was vicious and merciless, then he couldn't blame him for being vicious. To be able to reach this position, who would be as clean as a white lotus? It was just that no matter what they did, they still played within the rules. However, there was no need for rules at this point. What? Is there a problem? When Ren Baqian returned to his room, he saw 5 or 6 missed calls from Yang Sen on his cell phone. He wondered if there were any twists and turns. It's fine if you don't make a move, but once you do, it'll be troublesome. Yang Sen sighed on the other end of the phone. Does he have a powerful background? Ren Baqian thought about it. Was there anyone with a more powerful background than him? Ren Baqian was now the ambassador connecting the two worlds and a man-wheel expert. He had a large group of earth-wheel experts under him. His background is not small. The other party's identity is not simple. The most important thing is the item in his hands. Yang Sen then told the other party's identity. Wang Ji? The top 100 richest people on the list? Ren Baqian was surprised. He had never heard of this name before. Although the other party's fame was not as eye-catching as internet giants like Uncle Ma and Uncle Ma, in fact, their influence was not low. Not only did he own the largest oil company in the country, but he also owned several oil and gas projects in the country. More importantly, he had something very important in his hands. 40% interest in a rock page company in America. A large oil field had just been discovered under the company's land, which was worth $900 billion according to the market price. Even if the entire oil field didn't belong to this company, they could still get a share of the profits. Although the news had not been announced, in this era where energy was the #1 resource, holding such a card in his hand was indeed not low. Not to mention the #1 privately run oil company, which could also explain some things. Therefore, even though Yang Sen had already called the other party through someone else, it was hard to say how effective it would be. In particular, Ren Baqian didn't say or do anything. He couldn't possibly tell him how important his identity was, could he? He could only talk about it from the side. Oh, got it, Ren Baqian replied indifferently. If you can apologize. Yang Sen said hesitantly. If Ren Baqian apologized and expressed his sincerity, this matter could be resolved. This is my house. If he barged into my house, do I have to treat him like a lord? Ren Baqian sneered. It's just a little girl and the flying motorcycle has malfunctioned, Yang Sen said. Forget it. He firmly supported all of the Empress's actions. Everything that the Empress did was right. They are the ones who should be apologizing. They should really go and offer incense to thank Buddha for his protection. Yang Sen was frowning on the other end of the phone. That Wang Ji's identity was indeed not ordinary, but these two were not to be trifled with. To be honest, the Blessed Enclave was much more important than an oil field in the United States, or rather, the two could not be compared at all. At present, whether it was the secret manual, the long and short saber, the pair of swords made of unknown materials, or other things that the other party had taken out, they could all be said to be priceless treasures. The things contained in them were extremely valuable, whether it was the ability to control weapons with consciousness or new materials. Besides, there was no other possibility of obtaining these things from him. I will think of another way. Don't get into conflict with the other party and inform me if anything happens. Yang Sun thought that he had to communicate with the higher-ups. If that person appeared, he would definitely be able to suppress Wang Ji. As long as he doesn't provoke me, can't I drive the flying motorcycle and crash into his house? Rinpoche grinned and hung up the phone. To be honest, he was really unlucky to encounter such a thing as soon as he came back. By the time Rinpoche hung up the phone, the Empress had already changed into a red dress. Go out for a meal? Then go to the Bund to see the scenery? Rinpoche asked. Yes, I want to watch a movie, the Empress said. From her voice, one could tell that she was very interested. After coming to this world so many times, she had never gone to the cinema to watch a movie. She always saw such scenes on television, which made her curious. That's good. Rinpoche felt that it wasn't a bad idea for the two of them to watch a movie and eat popcorn like an ordinary couple in the dark. After eating, Rinpoche did some research and found that there was an interesting horror movie being screened. X-Men New Mutants. Rinpoche was also interested in making an X-Men movie into a horror movie. Rinpoche and the Empress ate enough food for about 30 people. The Empress's chopsticks moved like a fan and couldn't be seen clearly. Rinpoche could only see a series of afterimages. Although they were in a private room and didn't scare the other guests, the waiter was frightened. Rinpoche had to admit that after his body became stronger, everything else was fine. However, his appetite was destined to make it impossible for him to eat in the restaurant's lobby. There weren't many people in the cinema. Rinpoche and the Empress each carried a big bucket of popcorn and drinks into the cinema hall. What are these? The Empress asked as she looked at the glasses in her hand. Put them on and see. You will know the specific effect in a while. Rinpoche demonstrated how to put on the 3D glasses. Rinpoche felt at ease when he smelled the fragrance from the Empress's body. He reached out and grabbed one of her hands. The two of them quietly waited for the movie to start. The movie had just started, and the leaves that floated out of the screen surprised the Empress. It looks like it's in the air. The Empress stretched out her finger as if she wanted to touch it. It's a type of technology that uses the visual difference between the two eyes to produce a visual effect. It's like looking at a real object. Rinpoche briefly introduced what he knew. Very interesting. The Empress was very interested in this. As the movie progressed, the plot of the movie began to attract the Empress's attention. The two of them didn't say anything else and quietly watched the movie while feeling the warmth from their hands that were holding each other's hands. The atmosphere of the movie was a little strange and was indeed filled with the atmosphere of a horror movie. Rinpoche was really afraid that the Empress would be frightened by the sudden scenes in the movie and have an extreme reaction. Fortunately, this situation didn't happen. It wasn't until a character approached a rolling washing machine that a palm and flame suddenly shot out from inside. The Empress subconsciously flicked her finger at the moment the palm came over. Rip! Along with a slight sound, a big hole appeared in the position of the palm on the screen. Your Majesty. Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he held the Empress's hand. There was a big hole in the screen, so the movie naturally couldn't be watched anymore. Even though the theater immediately arranged for other theaters, the two of them weren't interested. Let's go back. The Empress was a little disappointed, but she couldn't say anything since she had ruined the movie. The two of them drove all the way back. When they passed a junction, an ear-piercing sound of tires could be heard. They saw a construction truck directly colliding with Rinpoche's car. F***ck. Rinpoche cursed. He stepped on the accelerator and felt the car shake violently. Then the sky spun and the whole car was sent flying. Chapter 503. The other party is here. 4 minutes and 10 seconds to reach Junction A. There will be a 30-second red light. We must succeed. Hearing the voice coming from the walkie-talkie, the man's eyes lit up and he smiled. I'm a professional. Tossing the walkie-talkie on the passenger seat, the man took out a cigarette, lit it and put it in his mouth. He looked at the time again before stepping on the accelerator. 3 minutes left, the current speed is 35 kilometers per hour. 2 minutes left, 50 kilometers per hour. 30 seconds left, 80 kilometers per hour. Arrive at the estimated time. The man calculated in his mind. 10:98. The man could already see the lights at the junction ahead. A black car slowly drove through the junction. The timing was just right. For this moment, he had traveled this road 5 times that night to accurately calculate the starting position and speed at each time to ensure that he would arrive at the destination within 3 seconds. It's the target. After the man confirmed that there were no other cars behind the other party, he did not slow down at all. Boom. As the car vibrated, the other party flew out as expected. And the position was just right. As a precaution, he had installed a rack at the back of the car. His center of gravity was mainly on the top of the rack. If the position was wrong, he would have to make an emergency turn and use the center of gravity of the rack to flip the car, directly squashing the other party into a discus. However, there was no need for that now. With a smile on his face, the man stepped on the accelerator and continued to ram. He even made a slight change in direction. As long as he could ram the other party into the wall on the side of the road, the other party would definitely die. 5 million in hand, the man thought to himself. Then at this moment his eyes narrowed. He saw that when the car tumbled in the air, the already deformed door flew out, and then a red shadow appeared outside the car like a ghost. The car seemed to have been stopped in time, and the momentum of the tumbling had completely disappeared. It just floated in the air. Looking closely, the woman in red was holding the hood of the car with one hand in the air. The Audi A6, which weighed close to 2 tons, was lifted several meters into the air like a toy. Impossible. The man's pupils shrunk to the size of a needle. The scene in front of him was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even seeing a UFO was more believable than the scene in front of him. He was not the only one who was shocked. Even the few cars that had just passed by the junction stopped by the side of the road. The people in the cars all stared with wide eyes as they watched the figure lift the car 6 to 7 meters into the air and then land on the ground. God. I believe in martial arts again. Is this an ability? The people on the bus were all dumbfounded. They didn't know how to understand this matter. The truck passed directly under the Empress and Rinpoche. The driver couldn't think. That scene just now was too shocking to him. Seeing the building getting closer and closer, he suddenly came back to his senses and turned the steering wheel, but it was too late. Boom. What should we do? A car stopped by the side of the road. The 2 people in the car saw this scene and were trembling all over. They had been following behind Rinpoche for about 100 meters and had seen this scene clearly. At this moment, the 2 of them were completely flustered. Go back and inform the boss. The 2 of them didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly drove away. At the same time, they also made a phone call and told the others about the shocking scene just now. Cough cough. Rinpoche felt guilty as he climbed out of the car. The Empress was fine. Unless a nuclear bomb exploded, a truck wouldn't be able to do anything to her. However, he didn't have the Empress's strength. Of course, with the Empress around, nothing would happen to him. However, the scene of the truck crashing into him still sent a chill down his spine. The other party was really hateful. His first move was to take someone's life. Almost instantaneously he suspected Wang Ji. The accident happened at noon, and he was directly hit by a truck at night. Furthermore, that truck didn't sound its horn or slow down. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like it was trying to kill him. Rinpoche touched his forehead and his hand was stained with blood. Just now, the truck directly crashed into the side where the Empress was sitting. The Empress was fine, but he suffered some minor injuries. Bastard. Rinpoche gritted his teeth and turned his head to look at the condition of the truck. He saw that the truck had already fallen to the ground, leaving a long mark on the ground. Half of the truck had crashed into the building in front. The situation inside was completely covered in dust and nothing could be seen. The Empress was standing beside the truck and no one knew what she was thinking. It's too heavy, I can't pull it out, the Empress said as she returned to Rinpoche's side in a flash. The truck itself weighed about 15 tons. In addition to the things it carried, it was close to 30 tons. Even if the Empress could lift a car that weighed close to 2 tons into the air, it would still be difficult for her to pull a heavy truck that had crashed into the building. I reckon they are dead by now, Rinpoche said as he looked at the half of the truck that was exposed outside. However, I can roughly guess who did it. The people from this morning? The Empress asked coldly. Most likely. Rinpoche took off his clothes and wrapped them around his head, making himself look like a mummy. Find out where they are. The Empress said murderously. Originally, she was already a little disappointed that she couldn't watch the movie. There was actually someone who was so daring to attack her. He simply felt that he had lived too long. Ren Baqin nodded. It wasn't his style to not take revenge when there was a grudge. A gentleman would take revenge from morning till night. He touched his phone and realized that it was still on him. He held it in his hand and hesitated for a while before making the call. At this moment he felt that it was a little troublesome because he didn't know where the other party lived. Yang Sen should be able to get his address, but he definitely wouldn't tell him. Unless he risked a rift with the nation to threaten Yang Senator. However, the loss outweighed the gain. After all, it wasn't a good idea to threaten the nation. If he could endure for now and find the other party's location before taking revenge, it would be much easier. Unfortunately, he never liked to take revenge in the future. Today's revenge must be taken today. Fortunately, there was still a way that didn't require him to shed all pretense of cordiality with the nation. Didn't the other party have an injured person? He would capture her first. There were close to 40 top grade A hospitals in Shanghai. Such a person would definitely be in the best hospital. Therefore, as long as he went to one of the top 3 hospitals, there was an 80% chance of finding the other party. Ren Baqin turned on his phone and searched for the 3 best hospitals in Shanghai. After memorizing their names, he immediately switched off his phone. Your Majesty, let's go to Zhongshan Hospital first. Can you still recognize the people from this morning? I have a photographic memory, the Empress said proudly. She then lowered her voice. However, these ants aren't worthy of my attention. Ren Baqin thought, this means that you didn't look at them, so you don't remember them? This is indeed your Majesty's style. Let's wait for a few minutes and see if anyone comes to investigate. Ren Baqin looked around and saw a few cars parked by the roadside in the distance. Your Majesty, are there any problems with these people? The Empress glanced in that direction and said faintly, they are all ordinary people. Let's wait then. Perhaps someone from the other party will come to investigate. After Ren Baqin finished speaking, the 2 of them hid in the shadows by the roadside. After a while, there were indeed people who came to investigate, but they were indeed ordinary people. One by one they approached cautiously while making calls. Soon after, police cars and ambulances quickly arrived at the scene. Let's go, Ren Baqin said. It seemed like he had to try his luck at the hospital. As soon as he finished speaking, the Empress lifted him by the collar. Once again he felt like he was riding on a cloud with strong winds blowing against his nostrils. Seeing that everything on both sides was rapidly retreating, the Empress then jumped onto a tall building and moved in the direction that Ren Baqin had pointed out. Not long after Ren Baqin left, a few people came to the scene. After understanding the situation, they quickly called Yang Sr. Accident? The truck directly hit the car and sent it flying? Are they alright? Qi Zixiao carried the car and flew 6 to 7 meters into the air? After that, the 2 of them left the scene and their whereabouts are unknown? Yang Sen's heart trembled when he heard the contents of the call. He quickly hung up and called Ren Baqin, but the other party's phone was turned off. It's over. Something big is going to happen. An hour later, Ren Baqin and the Empress arrived at Zhongshan Hospital. After inquiring about the location of the special service ward, they walked toward that building. Just as they reached the bottom of the building, they saw a few people supporting a lady in a patient's gown and hurriedly walking out. When one of them saw Ren Baqin and the Empress, his facial expression changed drastically. He repeatedly urged, quick. At the same time, he and the other person beside him became vigilant. Chapter 504. Ren Baqin knew that they were the people he was looking for just by looking at their vigilant attitude. He also knew that the incident this time was indeed caused by the people behind them. Otherwise, why would they rush out of the hospital at this time and have such a change in expression when they saw the 2 of them? There was no need to even ask. Ren Baqin calmly walked toward them with a smile on his face and said, you guys are really good people. You were afraid that I wouldn't be able to find them, so you specially sent them here. When the people opposite heard Ren Baqin's words, their expressions changed drastically. They quickly stuffed the woman into the car and closed the door. The rest of the people didn't even get in the car, and the car immediately started moving. Leaving now. Without an experienced driver like me, what if you go the wrong way? Ren Baqin moved his feet, and his body immediately bounced a few meters away and landed beside the car. Stop him. The few people outside the car immediately rushed toward Ren Baqin. Ren Baqin grinned happily. As a dignified man-wheel expert, he finally had the chance to make a move. Then a red phantom flashed across the scene, and the few people immediately flew backward. Your Majesty, don't let the car go. Spare them. I want them alive. Ren Baqin said somewhat resentfully. It seemed like it wasn't time for him to make a move yet. The Empress's body instantly disappeared and landed on the car that was already a few meters away. She then slammed her palm downward. Bang! Rinpoche could feel the vibration coming from under his feet. The windows of the Mercedes-Benz nanny van were all shattered. The cement below the car flew everywhere, and the chassis directly smashed to the ground. Looking from the side, the nanny van was directly smashed, and all 4 of its wheels were smashed into the ground. Other than the glass shattering, there wasn't much damage to the entire car. The few people lying on the ground hadn't lost consciousness yet, and they were completely dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Needless to say, the surrounding people were even more shocked. As the best hospital in Shanghai, there were many people going in and out even in the middle of the night. This move of the Empress made everyone who saw this scene dumbfounded. Rinpoche turned his head to take a look. There weren't many people, but there were more than 10 of them. The impact of this situation was pretty bad, but he was also forced to do this. Who did he offend by driving home? Rinpoche went forward and opened the car door. There were only 3 people in the car: the driver, the woman who was helped into the car just now, and the other female bodyguard. All of them widened their eyes and looked at him in horror. Taking a closer look, it was a girl about 16 or 17 years old. She was dressed in loose clothes, and one of her hands was fixed in a cast. She looked delicate and pitiful, especially her fearful eyes, which were quite interesting. "Come out by yourself?" Rinpoche asked with a smile. The girl quickly shook her head. "Who are you? What do you want?" Rinpoche leaned forward, grabbed her arm and pulled her out. The girl immediately fell to the ground. Her face was full of fear and tears were flowing out. "Let go of Miss," the driver shouted, and the female bodyguard pounced on Rinpoche. "Go back." Rinpoche gently patted the female nurse's face. "I didn't want to hit anyone." The female bodyguard's neck was almost twisted at a right angle. Rinpoche suspected that he heard a cracking sound. Rinpoche turned around and searched for a cell phone from a bodyguard who was lying on the ground. He gestured to everyone and said, "Ask your boss to call me as soon as possible. My patience is limited. If you are late, I will sink her into Heilongjiang." "What are you going to do? There are so many people here. Aren't you afraid of the police?" The girl on the ground trembled. "I'm afraid." Rinpoche sighed. Then, without waiting for the girl to speak, he said, "I can't sleep if I don't take revenge. Do you know that insomnia is very painful?" "Let's go." Rinpoche nodded at the Empress. The Empress looked at the girl on the ground. She grabbed her leg with one hand and Rinpoche's collar with the other. In an instant, the 3 of them disappeared into the night. Just as the girl screamed, the Empress shook her hand. Immediately, the girl felt as if all the joints in her body had broken apart. She could only let out groaning sounds that were not suitable for children. "Let's find a roof," Rinpoche said. After a while, the 3 of them landed on the roof of a 10-story building. "What's that smell?" Rinpoche smelled a foul smell as soon as he landed. Following which, he looked at the girl who was paralyzed on the ground with disdain. At this moment, the girl on the ground couldn't care less about these things. First, she was forcibly taken away from the car. Then she was grabbed by the feet and rode on the clouds. She could only watch as the tall buildings and the ground below swept past her head. It was already good enough that she didn't faint. Just as the Empress put her on the ground, she started to cry. Rinpoche stood at the edge of the building and felt the wind blowing against his face. Looking at the night view of the city below, he suddenly felt like taking a selfie. "Come, smile." Rinpoche took the bodyguard's phone and took a picture of himself and the red figure behind him. Then he sent it to his own phone. Just as he finished doing this, his phone lit up again. The voice of Gokuraku Jodo came directly from the phone. Looking at the big boss displayed on the screen, Rinpoche smiled and accepted the call. Only a faint breathing sound came from the other end of the phone and no one spoke. Rinpoche wasn't in a hurry and waited patiently. "Who are you? Why did you capture my granddaughter?" After half a minute, the voice of an old man could no longer wait. "I'm Ultraman Tiga, and I'm about to return to Nebula M78. I saw that your granddaughter's bones are amazing, so I want to take her in as my disciple. I want to impart my ultimate skill, Buddha's palm," Rinpoche said cheekily as he sat at the edge of the building. "What do you want? Say it. Don't be greedy." The old man's voice continued. "It's very simple. You and your wife sit in the car and I'll drive a truck at 80 miles per hour to hit you. As long as you die, this matter will be over." Rinpoche squinted his eyes and smiled. Following Rinpoche's voice, heavy breathing came from the other end of the phone. Tell me something practical. What exactly do you want? The old man suppressed the anger in his heart and said, or you can tell me where you are. As long as you don't die tonight, this matter will be over. Hong Kong Wenhua Hotel. I'll wait for you here. The old man sounded carefree. Rinpoche, damn, you're actually not in Shanghai? I have a very regrettable news to tell you. There's going to be another missing person in this world. Rinpoche felt a toothache after recovering from his shock. That old bastard was actually not in Shanghai? It would be troublesome for him to catch him. Do you really think you can be lawless? The old man said angrily. I can't afford to be labeled as lawless. You should be the lawless one, right? Since you're not going to show up, your granddaughter will help you fend off this disaster. People say that raising a jade to fend off disasters, but you are raising a granddaughter to fend off disasters. I wonder how many granddaughters you have? How many disasters can they fend off? Rinpoche sneered. Don't bring disaster to your family. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to your family if you don't abide by the rules? The old man said angrily. Rinpoche even heard the sound of something being smashed on the other end of the phone. Rinpoche sneered. If the country allowed something to happen to his family, then it wouldn't just be 1 or 2 people who would die. No matter what happened between him and the old man, the country would guarantee that nothing would happen to his family. Rinpoche was very confident about this. I'm here to bid farewell to your granddaughter. It's a pity that she won't be able to see such a beautiful world in the future. Rinpoche placed the phone next to the girl's ear. Grandpa, save me. The girl cried and shouted. Rinpoche immediately hung up the phone. He couldn't be bothered to listen to what Wang Ji was saying. Do you want to live? Rinpoche squatted beside the girl and smiled. Where do you live? Rinpoche's smile was like that of a demon in the eyes of the girl. She shouted hoarsely, If you kill me, Grandpa will avenge me. Do you really think your grandpa can avenge you? Or does he have the ability? Rinpoche asked with a smile. He definitely will. The girl's face was full of fear, but her voice was firm. What a pity. Ideals are beautiful, but reality is cruel, Rinpoche muttered as he stood up. After this incident, he realized that it was too troublesome to rely on the country for everything. Although he didn't provoke others, there would always be all sorts of things that came to him. It seemed like he still had to establish his own power on Earth so that he wouldn't be tied down when things happened. Well, he should first get 100 burly Earthwheel experts with arms that could run a horse. Kill her? The Empress asked faintly. The fear on the girl's face deepened, and her whole body trembled. In her eyes, this man and woman were 2 demons. Do you have any last words? This world is very beautiful, but it's a pity that you can't see it anymore. Rinpoche turned his head and looked at the girl. My grandpa will definitely avenge me. The police will definitely catch you. The girl said with a face full of despair. Rinpoche was a little bored. This kind of reply made it seem as if he was the villain in a television drama. However, he was the victim. Who did he offend? He couldn't return home in the middle of the night. Furthermore, he had to endure the cold wind on the roof of this big building and was hated by others. Chapter 505. You want me to make peace and release him? Yang Sen raised his voice and said angrily, What did you do earlier? There's no way to make peace. Let him prepare for his funeral. It's just a misunderstanding. It's a peaceful society now. Who can be lawless? The magnetic voice of an old man was heard on the other end of the phone. With old Wang's status, he shouldn't be threatened. Moreover, his granddaughter has been kidnapped, which is too much. Get someone to release him. No matter what, we have to consider the big picture. Not to mention kidnapping and murder, these kinds of things could be ignored. We represent the nation. Is there really someone who wants to challenge the authority of the nation? Who is the other party? He's too daring. If something really happens to old Wang's granddaughter, it will be a disaster. Does he really think he's the Monkey King? Even the Monkey King can't escape from the palm of the Buddha, let alone a human. It's too late to talk about this now. I can't even find him. Yang Sen had a headache. Get Wang Ji to live in seclusion and not reveal his whereabouts. So serious? The other person was surprised. He had said so much, but Yang Sen still said this. It seemed like the other party was really not to be trifled with. It's very serious. It's almost the same as what you said. Wang Ji has really done it this time. There are many things that I can't tell you. You will find out in the future, Yang Sen said. After all, only a few people knew about Rinpoche, and he couldn't tell them the specific situation. However, Wang Ji was really in big trouble this time. He was in the top 100 of the world's richest people and might even be at the top of the list. However, didn't you see who you provoked this time? The person on the other end of the phone still doubted whether Rinpoche would be lawless. In fact, there was no doubt that he was really lawless. He more or less understood Rinpoche's character. After all, there was a department that specialized in studying the two of them. Revenge was a certainty. It would be strange if he didn't take revenge. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He didn't usually provoke others and rarely showed his face. However, if someone provoked him, he wouldn't show any mercy. The Jean family in S City was the best example. He directly exterminated the entire family, regardless of whether they were involved in the matter, regardless of whether they were male or female, young or old. His methods were truly chilling. Besides Rinpoche, Qi Zixiao, who was beside him, couldn't communicate with anyone else. It was as if she viewed everyone else as ants. Not only were these two people very important, but their strength was also no different from Superman in the movies. Just today at the scene of the car accident, when the car flipped in the air, he instantly got out of the car and jumped 6 or 7 meters high while carrying a car that weighed nearly 2 tons. Was this something a human could do? Even though he already knew Qi Zixiao's strength, he was still shocked. He had seen it all through the surveillance camera. Even though he had already known the other party's strength, he was still shocked. He could also feel the other party's inhuman strength, speed, and physical toughness. Wang Ji actually dared to use such an extreme method to attack these two people. He simply had a death wish. If anything were to happen to these two, the country would not let Wang Ji off. Speaking of which, it was funny. If someone wanted to touch these two people, no matter who it was, the country would not let them go. However, these two people wanted to take revenge and he had to stop them. This was where he was in a difficult position. No matter what happens to Wang Ji this time, break off your relationship with him if you can, Yang Sen kindly reminded him. The expression of the person on the other end of the phone immediately turned serious. For Yang Sen to say this, it meant that the threat didn't come from the people who had a conflict with Wang Ji, but from the system that he was rooted in. That was why he said that after this incident, he would immediately break off his relationship with Wang Ji. But how could this be possible? Not to mention other things, just the oil rights in the US were a big protective talisman. That's it. I won't say anything else. Yang Sen hung up the phone and felt a headache. His men were one step too late at the scene of the car accident and the hospital. Now that the other party didn't want to see him, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to find them with their skills. Fortunately, there was still a chance. As long as the other party couldn't find Wang Ji, they would definitely show up. Now he would go to their place to see if he could find them. If they were ordinary people, they naturally wouldn't be able to go back. However, these two people couldn't be viewed with common sense. They had to rest, right? Could it be that they could sneak into a hotel to rest like they did when they were fleeing overseas? One had to know that the two of them were bringing another person with them. The most suitable place for them to stay was naturally their own home. At the thought of this, Yang Sen got up and hurriedly walked out of the door. He hoped that the person was still alive. Yang Sen guessed correctly. Rinpoche and the Empress had really returned home. He tied the girl up like a mummy, stuffed her mouth with something and lay on the bed. Until now he hadn't asked for the girl's name. Regardless of whether she was innocent or not, regardless of how bright her future was supposed to be, this matter could no longer be resolved peacefully. Her fate was sealed because of this. Being born into a rich and powerful family was a good thing. She enjoyed the wealth that Wang Ji brought and naturally had to bear the hatred that Wang Ji provoked. In Rinpoche's eyes, there were no innocent people. Just like the people from the Jean family. After being in a daze for more than an hour, the Empress walked into his room and said, "Someone's here." Rinpoche immediately woke up and heard the doorbell at the same time. They're gone. It's not good for anyone to shed all pretenses of cordiality. At this time, there were only two groups of people who could be here. One was the people from the Messier 87 department, and the other was Wang Ji's people. If it was the former, he didn't want to meet them now. At this time, downstairs, Yang Sen pressed the doorbell for a long time. Seeing that there was no response, he gestured to the young man beside him. He immediately took out a tablet and pressed it for a long time. Then the smart door lock made a slight click. Yang Sen pushed the door open and saw that the villa was deserted. "Mr. Ren, can you say a few words?" Yang Sen shouted. "No matter what, the country has its laws. I know that you are angry now, but there are other ways to solve this matter other than purely relying on force. Force can't solve all problems. The country will definitely give you an explanation for this matter." Rinpoche, who was on the roof, curled his lips when he heard the voices in the villa. Force indeed couldn't solve all problems, but it might be the most convenient and satisfying way to solve them. Of course, he wouldn't use other methods to solve problems that could be solved by force. Only when force couldn't solve problems would it be time to show his wisdom. Unfortunately, it wasn't necessary now. Let's go. Rinpoche pointed to the forest behind him and gestured to the Empress. The three of them disappeared on the roof again. Yang Sen shouted for a long time, but there was no response. He then walked upstairs. Minister, there were people here just now. They just left. Someone came out after checking the bedroom. Spread out and look for them. Pay special attention to the roof, Yang Sen ordered. However, he also knew that the chances of finding them were very slim. The other party was too fast and skilled. If they didn't want to see him, it would be useless even if he dug 3 feet into the ground. After a while, everyone found nothing. Yang Sen was already mentally prepared for this. He said, in addition, a few people go and look around to see if there's anything valuable. Remember, don't mess around. Things that have been moved must be returned to their original state. Do you want to install 2 surveillance devices and listening devices? As long as they come back, we will know immediately. No need. Yang Sen waved his hand. If the other party found out about the installation of surveillance devices and listening devices, he reckoned that he would be in big trouble. Minister, there's a discovery. Human limbs were found in a refrigerator in the kitchen. Yang Sen was shocked when he heard this and thought to himself, it can't be? Did these 2 really kill the hostage? And even leave it in the refrigerator? This is really a fight to the death. When he rushed to the kitchen and saw the contents of the refrigerator, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. The inside of the refrigerator wasn't as miserable as he thought it would be. There was only an arm and a leg in the refrigerator, as well as a liver, stomach, kidney, and spleen that were separately wrapped up and placed in the refrigerator. From the arm and leg, it could be seen that this belonged to a man. Bring it back for testing and find out its identity, Yang Sen ordered. It was impossible for him to ignore such things. However, he had some conjectures that these limbs probably didn't belong to an earthling. There was no need to store the bodies of earthlings like this. Furthermore, Rinpoche had brought the bodies of earth wheel experts from the paradise to the laboratory. The limbs here probably came from the blessed enclave as well. Furthermore, he had a feeling that the owner of these limbs was probably not ordinary. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't have stored them like this. If he guessed correctly, this corpse was prepared to be handed over to him by Rinpoche. Unfortunately, it was disrupted by Wang Zhi's matter. Chapter 506. After Yang Sen and the rest left, Rinpoche returned to the villa. You're still acting like a thief when you're back home. Rinpoche was a little puzzled. Then, he shifted his gaze to the girl who had already given up struggling. If it wasn't for you and your grandfather, why would I have to do this? After walking 1 round upstairs and downstairs, Rinpoche realized that Tingyu's limbs and internal organs had disappeared from the fridge. He didn't care about this. After all, he had originally intended to bring them to the laboratory. But even so, he still had to talk to Yang Sen about it in the future. Did he think it was his own house just because he wanted to take it? When he returned upstairs, Rinpoche realized that the Empress had thrown aside many things in her cabinet. Among them were the lipsticks and cosmetics that he had bought. What's wrong? Rinpoche was astonished. Someone touched you, I can feel it. Looking at the Empress's expression, it was obvious that she wasn't very happy at this moment. Although it didn't seem like a big deal and it was just touched by someone, don't forget her identity. After all, she was the emperor of a country. How could she not be concerned when her things were touched by a stranger without her knowing? I will find trouble with Yang Sen later, Rinpoche consoled her. He leaned against the door and looked at the Empress, who was sitting on the bed. What else are you looking at? The Empress raised her head in dissatisfaction. Good night, Your Majesty. Rinpoche placed his hand on his chest and bowed. After sleeping for an unknown number of hours, he woke up and saw that the sky outside was already bright. After charging the bodyguard's phone, he turned it on and saw a series of text messages and missed calls. Not long after, his phone rang again. Rinpoche picked it up and saw that the name displayed on the screen was Director Wang. Yesterday he had taken the time to learn more about Wang Zhi and his company. He had a better understanding of the Wang father and son. If he wasn't wrong, this CEO Wang was Wang Zhi's son and the girl's father, Wang Xuanli. Mr. Rin? I think we can talk. Rinpoche had just picked up the phone when he heard a voice from the other end. Actually, it's just a small misunderstanding between us. There's not much conflict between us. I think we can resolve this misunderstanding. I would like to express my apologies for the previous incident and will compensate Mr. Ren. There's no misunderstanding. Your father will sit in the car and let me hit him with the truck. After that, this matter will be over, Ren Baqin said faintly. Mr. Ren, I can compensate you for what you did in the past. Moreover, both of us are responsible for this matter, Wang Xuanli said. Where are you now? Ren Baqin suddenly asked. Wang Xuanli paused for a moment. Mr. Ren? If you want to find me, you can come to Tan Province. It's too far, Ren Baqin said, feeling a little conflicted. Although I would like to meet Mr. Ren to resolve this matter, I still have some matters to attend to at the moment. If there is a suitable opportunity in the future, I would still be willing to befriend Mr. Ren. Before that, I wonder if Mr. Ren could release my daughter first? After I kill your father, if you are willing to be friends with me, I don't mind. Ren Baqin couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He immediately hung up the phone and sent a message to Qin Qin. Can you find a hacker to locate a person? Qin Qin? Who is it? Ren Baqin. What happened? Find someone's location. Wang Ji, the founder of Huaning Energy, was probably at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel last night. And his son. Wang Ji only had one descendant. At least he only had one descendant that was publicly known. As for whether he had any secret illegitimate children or whether he would cause a commotion among the rich and powerful, Ren Baqin wasn't interested at all. According to Ren Baqin's thinking, as long as the other party appeared in public, it shouldn't be difficult for a skilled hacker to locate his location through various means. Although it wasn't easy to find a skilled hacker, it was still much easier than finding Wang Ji. Someone told me to tell you, leave some leeway in life. I will give you an explanation for this matter. I want a location. Ren Baqin curled his lips. Why didn't the other party think of leaving some leeway? Was he regretting it now? It was too late. If it weren't for the Empress, even if he was a man-will expert, it would be difficult for him to escape death in the car. Alright, I will try. Wait for my news. After putting down the phone, Ren Baqin lay on the bed and continued to sleep. After 3 hours, Qin Qing sent a message. I found a supposedly very skilled hacker. He said he will give you news in an hour. Less than 20 minutes later, Qin Qing sent another message. Wang Ji is at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel and hasn't left. As for Wang Xuanli, he is in Tanzhou. Ren Baqin looked at the message and didn't expect Wang Ji to still be at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel. Was this confirmation that he wouldn't look for him? And that Wang Xuanli was actually in Tanzhou as well? Ask him to pay attention to the other party's information and inform me immediately if there are any changes. Ren Baqin replied and then shouted, Your Majesty. I have found him. He is in Hong Kong. If we drive there, it will take 18 hours and we will definitely be discovered. As for the high-speed rail, it will take 8 hours, but we will definitely be discovered. In any case, no matter how he went, he would definitely be discovered if he wanted to reach Hong Kong in a short period of time. Unless the Empress brought him along and rode on the clouds. However, even the Empress wouldn't be able to travel a distance of 1,500 kilometers. Let's go kill him and then go back, the Empress said as she appeared in front of the door. He still has a son. If we don't get rid of him, I'm afraid there will be trouble in the future, Ren Baqin said. Kill them one by one. The Empress's answer was very simple and consistent with her usual style. No matter what the other party's intentions were or how many people there were, they would just kill them one by one. I like your Majesty's decisiveness in killing. Ren Baqin tilted his head and smiled at the Empress. The Empress wrinkled her nose, snorted, and went back to change her clothes. Boo-hoo. The girl on the ground couldn't help but struggle when she heard their conversation. Be good and listen to me. When the time comes, I will send you to reunite with your family so that you won't be lonely down there, Ren Baqin said gently. The girl struggled even harder, and tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. A moment later, the Empress and Ren Baqin arrived at the foot of the mountain and flagged down a car. The Empress appeared directly in front of the car, and the driver had no choice but to stop. How much? I want the car. Ren Baqin knocked on the window and said. Crazy, the driver scolded. The next second, Ren Baqin grabbed him by the collar and pulled him out. How much did you buy this car for? Ren Baqin continued to ask. 230,000 yuan. The driver's face turned ashen. I'll give you 250,000 yuan. Ren Baqin took out his phone and saw a series of messages. Ren Baqin ignored them, forcibly transferred 250,000 yuan to the driver, and switched off his phone. You may leave. Ren Baqin threw the dumbfounded driver, who didn't know whether to be ecstatic or sullen. He drove more than 200 meters back to the road up the mountain, threw the girl in the bushes into the car, and drove all the way south. In order to prevent being discovered too early, Ren Baqin even found a small shop and bought 2 masks to wear. The Empress wore Tang Seng's and Ren Baqin wore Zhu Beiji's. No one said that Zhu Beiji didn't want to eat Tang Seng's meat. Ren Baqin laughed mischievously. His voice sounded a little muffled behind the mask. It wasn't illegal to wear a mask while driving, but it was easy to get beaten up with a pig's head, and it was a little stuffy. Less than an hour after Ren Baqin left, the driver that he had thrown onto the road was found by the people from the Messier 87 department. After all, it was easy to get hold of Ren Baqin's bank transfer information. After checking the direction in which the car was heading, Yang Sen's face turned green. He thought that it was just a dog that bit people, so he would just kill it. He didn't expect that the dog was actually Sun Wukong. However, he soon gritted his teeth. Since other methods didn't work, he might as well continue down this path. For me to be able to live to this day and sit in this position, I didn't grow up eating plain rice. Following his soft call, a young man pushed open the door and walked in. Boss. Have you contacted him? Wang Ji asked. I've contacted him. He's a Vietnamese and it said that he's quite strong. However, their asking price was very high, at least twice the normal price. The main thing is that it's very risky to enter the country, the young man said in a low voice. Give it to them. Wang Ji leaned back in his chair and said. Give them 3 days' time. I'll contact them again. If they can save the baby, give them double the price. Understood. Pour me another cup of tea. After saying that, Wang Ji leaned back in his chair. The other party was very strong, but no matter how strong they were still afraid of bullets. As for what would happen after the other party died, that was a matter for the future. The other party's death was better than his own death. In his opinion, since he had already used external forces, the matter should be resolved just like that. Professional matters should be handled by professionals, and naturally, there would be professionals for killing people. However, he still felt a little uneasy in his heart. What the bodyguard behind the other party said that day made him feel a little incredulous. At night, his plans were suddenly disrupted. Mr. Wang, there are some matters that require your assistance in the investigation. Please come with us. Can't I do it here? Wang Ji asked calmly as he faced the sudden appearance of a few policemen. In his heart, he was thinking that someone was going to make a move on him. Although your identity is special, no matter who you are, you have to go to the police station to assist in the investigation. Wang Ji and Wang Xuanli are being detained for suspected economic crimes. Ren Baqin turned on his phone after arriving in Shenzhen. He was stunned when he saw the text message. No wonder there weren't any interceptions along the way. He was already prepared to be intercepted. He didn't expect Yang Sen to actually do this again. Ren Baqin's facial expression changed. The previous one was different from this one. The previous one was just a small fry and didn't affect him much. Naturally, he didn't care about it. However, this time Wang Ji was courting death. Let's cross the sea. Ren Baqin switched off his phone after sending another text message. He then turned around and said to the Empress. The Empress glanced at the girl who was tied up in the back seat and asked, She brought it too? Let me handle it. Ren Baqin drove the car to the suburbs, took out a shovel from the trunk and dug a hole in the ground. Soon after, he pulled out the terrified girl who knew what he was doing and kept struggling out of the car. Don't be afraid. There's no pain in heaven and you won't be alone, Ren Baqin said gently. Ren Baqin said gently. He didn't want to extinguish such a fresh and tender flower, but he also didn't want to leave an enemy behind. After Ren Baqin finished speaking, he raised his hand and slapped the back of the girl's head. Bang! A moment later, Ren Baqin filled the hole and patted the soil to make it solid. I feel like I'm the antagonist boss. I feel a little guilty. Ren Baqin felt a little regretful. After all, he had just extinguished a flower bud. The Empress rolled her eyes. She didn't feel anything about his nonsensical moaning. Wasn't killing people as natural as eating and drinking? The Empress carried Ren Baqin and landed on the other side of the river more than 100 meters in front of her in just a few flashes. The surface of the river behind her seemed to have exploded and shot up into the sky, attracting the attention of many people. However, very few people saw the Empress's silhouette. Only a young couple by the river looked at the two people who suddenly appeared in front of them in a daze. They almost lost their ability to think. Good evening. Rinpoche chuckled as he was carried by the Empress. He didn't care how strange it was to be carried by a woman at this moment. In the next second, the two of them disappeared in front of the young couple. After a long time, the young couple screamed, "Ghost!" and scrambled away. At the Hong Kong police headquarters, Yang Sen stood in a room. In front of him was a piece of glass and he could see the scene on the other side. At this moment, Wang Ji was sitting there. No one was giving him a statement. He was the only one in the entire interrogation room, but he didn't feel anxious at all. Instead, he closed his eyes and rested. On the other hand, Yang Sen was thinking about the content of the phone call he had just received. "This is the remains of the corpse of a god." The first sentence almost scared him to the point that he stopped breathing. Of course, it's definitely not what you think. It's just that in the eyes of humans, this person could already be considered a god when he was alive. The time of death should be about half a month, but there's no decay. There's a very strange substance protecting his corpse. However, this substance is decreasing with the passage of time. According to estimates, it will disappear in about a year. The reason why I say this is the corpse of a god is mainly because of the thing contained in this corpse. His DNA is different from humans. Generally speaking, the more complex a creature is, the more junk DNA it carries. It is precisely this uncoded, useless DNA that helps higher organisms evolve into complex organisms. However, the amount of junk DNA in this body was much less, which was different from the conclusion of the current research. I'm guessing that this corpse was already evolving in another direction when it was alive, and this evolution direction is more pure. Even now, Yang Sen could not forget how he felt when he received the call. Even now, his heart was still trembling. Boom. Just as he was recalling, the wall beside him was suddenly smashed, and two people appeared in the room. "I hit the wrong wall. It's a little crooked. Over there." Rinpoche looked around, pointed in the direction of the glass, and spoke. He acted as if he didn't see Yang Sen, who was right in front of him. Voila! The glass was instantly shattered. A red shadow passed through the room and smashed the wall on the other side. Chapter 508. When Wang Ji regained consciousness, he immediately realized that he was being dragged by the collar by someone. Looking at the skyscrapers below him, his face turned ashen. Were these the two people he wanted to deal with? Were they really human? Could a human leap tens of meters and run up a vertical wall? Could a human appear tens of meters away in an instant, just like in the mythological novels? From his angle, he could see the figure in red when he turned his head. He could also see Rinpoche, whom the Empress was carrying in her other hand. He wanted to struggle, but he didn't even have the strength to move his fingers. Hong Kong was very small, only about 80 square kilometers. It was less than 10 kilometers from one end to the other, not to mention from the police headquarters. To the Empress, this distance was covered in a flash. In less than 10 minutes, the three of them landed at the place where they left. After landing, Rinpoche moved his muscles and bones. After all, it wasn't a comfortable thing to be dragged by someone and blown by the cold wind. Then he turned to look at Wang Ji, who was paralyzed on the ground, and asked, "Are you surprised?" "Very surprised." "Who are you? Are you really human?" Wang Ji's face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. He knew the identity of these two people, but he couldn't believe that they were the people he wanted to deal with. "Didn't you already know?" Rinpoche said as he twisted his neck. "I haven't seen someone so bold in a long time. I can't hide the fact that I was captured by you. I can guarantee that I won't seek revenge on you. If you have other requests, I can also satisfy them." Wang Ji suppressed his trembling voice and said, "Do you think I ran all the way from Shanghai to Hong Kong just to rob you?" Rinpoche squatted in front of him and asked with a smile. "You can't hide it. If I die, you will be in big trouble," Wang Ji begged in a low voice. "I don't need to hide it. Someone will help me hide it. As for big trouble, it's nothing." "You overestimate yourself," Rinpoche said. "Be a good person in your next life. Good people will be rewarded. For example, I help an old lady cross the road when I have nothing better to do. Bad things never happen to me." After finishing his words, he ignored the other party's reaction and slapped Wang Ji's head. The force of a few hundred kilograms made Wang Ji spurt blood from his mouth and nose in an instant. Next, they continued to dig holes and bury them. Just as Rinpoche poked an object with the crowbar, he suddenly realized that the object moved. It was the girl from before. An illusion? Rinpoche had just thought of this. Logically speaking, that slap should have killed him. He was confident in his own strength. Even if his palm didn't kill him, he should be dead after being buried for more than an hour, right? However, just as he was thinking about this, the girl's body moved again. He really didn't die? Ren Baqin was astonished. He didn't die from his own palm strike, and he didn't die after being buried for so long? This thought emerged in Ren Baqin's mind. He jumped into the pit and brushed off the soil on the girl's face. He stretched out his hand and found that she was indeed still breathing. Or is this girl really not destined to die? Ren Baqin squatted on the ground and rubbed the stubble on his chin. Your Majesty, that one didn't die. Oh, the Empress replied nonchalantly. Kill him again? Ren Baqin was a little hesitant. Killing someone once wasn't enough, and he still had to kill someone a second time. He couldn't bear to do it. After all, she was still an underage girl. Previously, he already felt a little guilty. If he were to kill her again, it wouldn't be justifiable. Furthermore, he had recently come into contact with that Nagi monk, Su Wen. He had also started to pay attention to these metaphysical things. This matter made him ponder over it a little more. At this moment, that trace of guilt in his heart sprouted in his heart and weighed down on one end of the scale. Keep her, bring her back to Dayo and let her fend for herself, Ren Baqin muttered. He pulled the girl out of the pit and threw Wang Ji into it. One pit for each radish, one goes in and one comes out, Ren Baqin muttered as he filled the pit with soil again. He held the girl's leg and shook it for a long time before throwing her into the back seat of the car. Your Majesty, are you tired? Ren Baqin threw the shovel back into the trunk, clapped his hands and asked. The Empress couldn't be bothered with him. It's really inappropriate for your Majesty to follow me around for such a small matter. Later, arrange some people here so that it'll be easier to arrange things in the future, Ren Baqin said as he sat beside the Empress. All right. The Empress nodded her head. Your Majesty, please choose the people who are tight-lipped, loyal, strong and able to accept new things. At the very least, they should be able to learn and understand the weapons and equipment on Earth so that they won't be shot down by machine guns. That would be a joke. Ren Baqin leaned back with his hands behind his back. When the time comes, I'll pick some people for you. You can choose from among them, the Empress said faintly. All right. Ren Baqin nodded his head and smiled. Actually, it's still more relaxing here. I don't have to consider too many problems. Even killing someone requires me to ponder for a long time. It's not like Tianjin Basin where people beat their brains out every day. You're too soft-hearted, the Empress said coldly. Ren Baqin tilted his head, thought for a while and said, I'm soft-hearted? It's all right. The Empress ignored him. In her opinion, he was still a little soft-hearted. Even though he could come up with all kinds of excuses for killing those people from Tianjin Basin that sounded reasonable, he still couldn't hide it. He was still a little soft-hearted and wanted to kill fewer people. However, this wasn't too bad, so she just let him be. He wasn't like Li Yuanzhu, who didn't kill anyone and was considered soft-hearted. Ren Baqin didn't have the strength to look down on all living things. Killing a few people could reduce the number of people he had to kill. Putting on a ferocious appearance could reduce a lot of trouble. Most of the time, trouble was equivalent to death. Even though it wasn't a very smart way of doing things, it wasn't bad either. Whoa! A soft sound came from the car. Ren Baqin turned his head and saw that the girl was sitting up in the back seat. She was actually awake. She didn't run away or scream. She just sat there in a daze. Ren Baqin was a little curious. This girl actually had such a reaction after coming back to life? He got up and opened the car door to take a look. He saw that the girl was sitting there in a daze. She didn't speak or move. Ren Baqin stretched out his palm and waved it in front of her eyes. The girl's eyes moved, turned her head to look at him, and then lowered her head to look at her muddy palm. Is she stupid? Ren Baqin's mind was filled with a series of question marks. Was she stupid because of his slap? Or did the lack of oxygen in the soil hurt her brain? Or was it both? However, he couldn't be bothered to think about her. He shouted at the Empress, Your Majesty, let's go. There's still one more. Along the way to Tanzhou, Ren Baqin used the rearview mirror to observe the girl from time to time. She was still in the same daze as before. Occasionally she would look at the Empress, look at Ren Baqin, or lower her head to look at her palms. She would touch her face with her hands and pat the mud off. Do you hate me? Ren Baqin casually asked as he drove. Hate me? The girl dragged out her tone and asked doubtfully. Your name? Name? She seems to be really stupid. Ren Baqin used the rearview mirror to observe her for a long time. He felt that she wasn't pretending. At least, the dullness in her eyes didn't seem to be fake. If a 16 or 17-year-old girl like her could deceive him, then it could only be said that all women were born to be drama queens. That's good. It's good to be a little stupid. Fools live much better than ordinary people, especially this kind. Rinpoche smiled faintly. After driving for 8 hours, Rinpoche was finally stuck in a traffic jam as he approached the highway junction of Tanzhou. Or rather, the other party had been waiting here for a long time. Mr. Rin, let's go back to Shanghai. If he continued, it would be too much. I can guarantee that he won't have the chance to trouble you again. Yang Xin knocked on Rinpoche's car window and said. After which, he saw the girl sitting in the back seat. Chapter 509. In the end, Rinpoche wasn't able to kill Wang Xuanli. With Yang Sun blocking his way and his promise that Wang Xuanli wouldn't have a chance to retaliate, Rinpoche finally took a step back after burying the culprit, Wang Ji. It was impossible to say that he wasn't discovered on his way to Hong Kong. However, he wasn't stopped, which meant that he had already indulged him once. After all, Wang Ji had used methods that exceeded the rules, so his death wasn't unjust. At this point, it seemed unnecessary to shed all pretense of cordiality and kill Wang Xuanli. Especially since Wang Xuanli was already under control and Yang Sun had made a promise, he wouldn't have a chance to retaliate. The words "no chance" were very interesting. If he wouldn't retaliate, then someone was suppressing him. However, the words "no chance" explained some problems. Seeing this, Rinpoche finally took a step back and returned to Shanghai. After all, he had been on the run for more than 20 hours, and he felt that it was quite tiring. There was still a fool that he hadn't handed over. Now, Rinpoche was sure that this little girl had really become a fool. Yang Sen's words were easy to understand, but she didn't respond at all. According to Rinpoche, this was a good thing. At least she could survive and live a more relaxed life than most people as a fool. He wouldn't have to kill the same person a second time. After returning to the villa, Rinpoche first went online to check Wang Xuanli's information. Indeed, he had been arrested for economic crimes. Combined with Yang Sen's words, he probably wouldn't have a chance to get out. Of the two people from the Wang family, one was dead and the other was injured. Huaneng Energy would experience a shock, but it wouldn't collapse. Therefore, the impact wouldn't be too great. However, Wang Ji and Wang Xuanli were arrested one after another, and Wang Ji died inexplicably. This would still cause a shock in society, and at the same time, many rich people would be vigilant and inquire about what had happened. After all, a rich person of the same level as them had fallen just like that. Many people felt sympathy for the death of a rabbit and were afraid that they would end up like him one day. Very soon, someone discovered a person who wouldn't have attracted much attention, Rinpoche. Although the witnesses at the scene of the car accident, the hospital, and the Hong Kong police station had their mouths sealed, some news still reached the ears of these people. This made Rinpoche a mark in many people's hearts. At the same time, they were also somewhat suspicious. Who exactly was Rinpoche? How much of what was said was true and how much was false? Soon, a video of the scene of the accident fell into the hands of some people. Everyone was shocked when they saw the scene. Did this really happen in reality? Rinpoche slept comfortably. Everyone thought that he was only in his 30s at that time, and many people thought that he had hope of reaching a higher level. I didn't expect him to be 90 years old. The Empress sneered. Everyone has been deceived. Rinpoche had a strange look on his face as he had never heard of such a thing. A 90-year-old man still hid his age and pretended to be a young genius. Tingyu was really in a bind. A spirit wheel expert would be respected no matter where he went. For him to actually do such a thing showed how obsessed he was with showing off. Of course, a 90-year-old spirit wheel expert and a 30-year-old spirit wheel expert were definitely different in the eyes of many people. After all, the latter had much greater potential. Even so, this person was really in a bind. We have detected a substance in his body that can maintain cell activity and delay cell death. We speculate that this substance has the effect of removing free radicals and providing energy. If there is progress in this area of research, I don't need to explain its importance. Mr. Rin should be able to understand, Yang Sun said. This was also the reason why he came here. When the results of the tests on this corpse were out, even the higher-ups began to pay attention to it. Rinpoche was also very interested. No one could be indifferent to prolonging their lifespan. It should be the spirit, Rinpoche said after some thought. As far as he knew, the biggest difference between a spirit wheel expert and an earth wheel expert was the use of the spirit. If the lifespan of an earth wheel expert was slightly longer than that of an ordinary person, it was because of their physical fitness. The lifespan of a spirit wheel expert was much longer than that of an earth wheel expert, almost double the lifespan. This should be related to the spirit. It should be something similar to the spirit, but there are some differences. It is more similar to the primordial spirit in novels. It can communicate with heaven and earth and can also condense heaven-grade weapons. Rinpoche explained to Yang Sen's puzzlement. Heaven-grade weapons? The spirit and the vital energy of heaven and earth combine to condense a type of weapon. However, this is too far away for you, Rinpoche said faintly. Following Rinpoche's words, Yang Sen watched helplessly as a metal chain emerged from Rinpoche's head. It twisted a few times like a snake before finally twisting into an S shape and then an M shape. Yang Sen stared at the top of Rinpoche's head and said, "This is?" Rinpoche was stunned. He stretched his hand toward his head, and the metal chain was about to retract. However, the Empress's movements were faster than it. She pulled it out and wrapped it around her hand. Then a spear covered in golden veins emerged from Rinpoche's temple and pierced toward the Empress. The Empress's face turned cold. She stretched out her hand and flicked it. The spear immediately let out a clear sound and retracted back into Rinpoche's head. Yang Sen's eyes widened. He looked at the metal chain that was wrapped around the Empress's hand and asked hesitantly, "Can I touch it?" No. Rinpoche promptly rejected. Did she think that it was a dog chain that anyone could touch? This is a heaven-grade weapon. As long as the person is alive, the heaven-grade weapon will exist. If the person is dead, the heaven-grade weapon will die, Rinpoche said faintly. Yang Sen was a little surprised. According to their understanding, Rinpoche's strength was similar to that of the selected experts. He should be at the man-will level and was at most a little stronger than those experts. However, according to what he said just now, this thing could only be condensed when one had reached the so-called spirit level, right? How did Rinpoche improve so quickly? One had to know that after the selected experts broke through, it was difficult for them to improve. As he thought about it, Yang Sen took out a square plate from his bag and a handle at the bottom. In the middle of the square plate was a screen. After fiddling with it for a while, he aimed the back of the square plate at Rinpoche and the number 158 immediately appeared on the screen. Then he aimed it at the Empress. That thing immediately emitted a green smoke. "What's this?" Rinpoche frowned and asked. "This is a small thing that was just created in the laboratory. I wanted to demonstrate it to the two of you, but I didn't expect it to spoil." Yang Sen laughed dryly. It can detect how much energy a person has in their body. Ordinary adult men have 10 to 15 energy, special forces soldiers have 20 to 30 energy, and experts who have just broken through to the man-will level should have 70 to 100 energy. As for Mr. Ren, your energy is 158. The upper limit of this thing is 1,500 energy. As you can see, Miss Chi has exceeded the upper limit. As Yang Sen spoke, his heart was in turmoil. This detector had a very special calculation method, and he didn't understand the specifics. However, he understood one thing. What did 1,500 energy mean? This was already equivalent to a human-shaped nuclear bomb. It wasn't an adjective, it was a real human-shaped nuclear bomb. Chapter 510. The detector was just a small interlude. Rinpoche and Yang Sen's topic returned to Teng Yu's severed limb. As time was too short, not many things had been discovered so far. However, the most important thing had already been revealed to everyone. Since ancient times, humans had never been so close to immortality. Even if their lifespan was doubled, countless people would be willing to exchange their entire family fortune for it. Not to mention the huge impact it would have on society. Now, a person studied for a total of 13 years from primary school to graduation from university. In society, they could work for another 35 years. If they studied for 20 years, they could only work for 28 years. After experiencing a short peak, they would start to go downhill when they had the most experience. 13 to 20 years was too short for current technology. They might not even be able to reach the peak in one aspect. If a person's lifespan was doubled, then a student who studied for 40 years would be able to reach an extremely high level of attainment in one aspect. Furthermore, after working for over 50 years, they would be able to maintain their peak for 20 to 30 years. If there was such a day, the entire society would be filled with all kinds of elites and talents in various fields. A long lifespan would allow countless people to devote their lives to their hobbies without having to weigh the gains and losses in a short period of time. The speed of technological advancement could be increased by 5 times, 10 times, or even more. The technological level that originally required 1,000 years to achieve could be achieved in a short 100 years. It could be said that there would be new changes every day. That would be a beautiful utopia. People would have more time to pursue their ideals and not for money. After all, in modern society, due to the oppression of life, people had no choice but to focus on how to earn money to support their families at a very young age. And if their lifespan was extended by a lot, young people would have more time to do all kinds of things for the sake of their ideals and interests without caring for returns. Just thinking about that kind of world would make people feel wonderful and excited. The Empress didn't understand what kind of changes would happen, but Ren Baqin could imagine it and could understand the excitement that Yang Sen revealed. Don't expect too much for the time being. This kind of thing isn't that easy to research. Ren Baqin wasn't pouring cold water on Yang Senator. In fact, he also had a lot of expectations. However, it was hard to say to what extent the current technology on Earth could be researched. This is already a straight road. At the end of the road is Rome. What we have to do next is to take one step at a time and keep moving forward, Yang Sen said. He already had a direction and everything was in front of him. Next, he just had to work hard in this direction. It wasn't that he was clueless, but he had a very clear goal. He believed that even if he couldn't see it, his son could. Ren Baqin told Yang Sen everything he knew about spirit wheel experts. The Empress would also occasionally add a few words to make Yang Sen's trip worthwhile. However, before Yang Sen left, he made a request. It was for the various materials in the blessed land. After all, there were many things that did not seem to be related to each other on the surface, but they could allow one to gain a deeper understanding of the blessed enclave, and they might be able to easily solve some of the difficult problems one might encounter in research. Ren Baqin had brought too little with him. If it was before, Yang Sen would not be anxious. However, after obtaining the corpse, the entire research institute became excited, and so did he. Furthermore, it was very likely that the Messier 87 department and the laboratory would continue to expand, and more talents would be transferred to them. This was good news for him. Regarding this, Ren Baqin still had the same attitude. He would use things in exchange. Although he didn't mind contributing to this matter, he didn't want to do so. Furthermore, no one would recognize his contributions in the future. On the contrary, it was better for both sides to maintain this kind of equal cooperation. Even if the value of the things that Earth offered was lower, such as some cheap things like skunk bombs in exchange for the corpse of a spirit wheel expert, he could still accept it. After staying on Earth for another day, Ren Baqin brought the Empress and the silly girl back to Dayo. Your Majesty, take a rest first. I will see if those people have returned. After Ren Baqin returned to the room he was in before he left, he looked at the fool beside him who still had a lifeless look on her face and was looking at the surroundings with a curious gaze. He thought for a while and said, I'll take this girl with me first. After leaving the room, Ren Baqin threw the silly girl to the guard and asked him to find a place to settle her down. Ren Baqin was prepared to keep this girl for the time being. When he returned to Dayo, he would bring her back to Lan City and settle her down in a place like the Beast Park to do chores within her capabilities. Ren Baqin felt that even if she recovered her memory one day, it wouldn't cause any trouble. After all, how much could a 16 or 17-year-old girl know? Furthermore, in this world that was full of danger, she might not even be able to walk out of Tianjin Basin by herself. In a few days she would be sold to a brothel. However, Ren Baqin didn't want to take this risk, and it was most appropriate to place her not far from him. After the guard took Wang Baobao away, Ren Baqin looked for Gong Zheng and asked, Are they back yet? Ren Baqin was naturally asking about those practitioners who went to spy on them. Gong Zheng looked up at the position of the moon and replied, Not yet. It has been more than a day and a night. If there are no accidents, it should be about time. Inform me when they are back, Ren Baqin said. Under the moonlight, Zhang Changkong was carrying a man in his 30s in one hand and a long saber in the other as he ran. At this moment, his embroidered clothes were tattered beyond recognition. His hair was disheveled and his face was stained with blood. He didn't have any of his previous elegance. A few hundred meters behind him, two silhouettes appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Chief, put me down. Green Ghost and White Ghost definitely won't be able to catch up to you. The man he was carrying had a lot of blood stains on his body. There were also 2 arrows shot through his body, one of which penetrated his abdomen and the other through his chest. This person was the warehouse supervisor of the Golden Ring residence, Zhan Qiang. The others who went with him were nowhere to be seen. Talk less. I can definitely bring you back. Zhan Changkong gritted his teeth. Chief, it doesn't matter if I die, but the entire Golden Ring residence needs you to support it, Zhan Qiang said weakly. How can I face everyone in the residence if I go back alone with 5 people? Zhan Changkong laughed bitterly. He felt a chill in his heart when he thought about the scouting mission. He didn't expect that there would be a spy in this group. All the practitioners who came from the south would bring experts from the same sect as them to prove their loyalty. This person was no exception. No one expected him to be a spy. Using the head of an earthwheel expert from the same sect as a price to sneak in as a spy, what kind of price and decisiveness was this? Just thinking about it made Zhang Changkong feel a chill in his heart. It was precisely because of this person that this group of people directly fell into the other party's trap. Nearly half of the experts died on the spot. The others scattered and escaped, but some of them died under the pursuit of the other party's experts. Among the 5 people from the Golden Ring residence, the inner supervisor, Su Ku, and the deputy supervisor, Lu Jing, died on the spot. The outer supervisor, Ling Ziquan, was blocking the enemy for Zhang Changkong. Currently, the green ghost and white ghost were still behind, and Ling Ziquan was nowhere to be seen. As for the spirit wheel expert, Zhuo Cheng, who was in charge of the scouting mission, he had long been entangled. Not only did the other party have spirit wheel experts, but there were also 2 of them. Chapter 5:11. Under the night sky, 2 figures covered in blood hurriedly ran to Jiangbei City and landed on the city wall. They turned around and looked at the darkness behind them. Then they sat there paralyzed and gasped for breath. Here they were finally safe. Who are you? The 2 of them jumped onto the city wall and immediately alerted the guards and patrolling winged cavalry warriors. I'm Shan Yu from Qingjiang sect. I was ordered by Sir Ren to investigate the Wang estuary. Inform Sir Ren that we were ambushed and suffered heavy casualties. Only the 2 of us escaped. There were people chasing us before, but they retreated when we were close by. The soldiers on the city wall didn't dare to delay and quickly arranged for someone to inform the guards. 3 patrolling winged cavalry warriors jumped off the wall and rushed into the darkness. They returned without success after a while. Ambushed? Only 2 of them managed to escape? Rinpochen had already laid down in his room to rest when he suddenly heard the news from the guards. He hurriedly put on his clothes and went out. Where are they? On the southern wall. I've already sent someone to bring them here, Gong Jing said beside Rinpochen. Rinpochen's face was gloomy. How could they be ambushed with more than 30 earthwheel experts in Zhuocheng? Furthermore, only 2 people escaped? Did they just stand there and let others kill them? What about Zhuocheng? After walking around the courtyard a few times, Rinpochen's gloomy face gradually calmed down. It seemed that the other party was well prepared. When he and the others arrived at Jiangbei, they were already prepared and set up a trap for him to fall into. Fortunately, he had arranged for these people to investigate. If the winged cavalry had gone, there would have been many casualties even if they won. Even so, he still felt the pinch as these people were still very useful to him. Putting aside the idea of the embroidered uniform guards, he still counted on these people to appease the people. After all, they were the local tyrants of Tianjing Basin, and it would be much easier for them to appease the people. However, there were so many casualties now. How could he not feel the pinch? After waiting for a while, someone informed him, "Sir, they are here. Bring them to the front hall," Rinpochen said as he walked toward the front hall. By the time he arrived, he already saw 2 people covered in blood and injuries standing there. "Sir Rin, we were ambushed and suffered heavy casualties. Only the 2 of us managed to escape." One of them stepped forward upon seeing Rinpochen enter, and his tone was filled with anger and grief. "Sir Rin, please avenge us." Rinpochen glanced at the 2 of them. He had some impression of the person who spoke. He was an expert from the south. Because of his pair of peach blossom eyes, Rinpochen had a deep impression of him. After all, a big man with an unshaven beard and a pair of watery peach blossom eyes looked strange no matter how one looked at it. "What's your name?" Rinpochen asked coldly. "Sir Rin, I'm Shan Yu from Qingjiang sect," the man replied. Rinpochen nodded and asked, "What exactly happened? How did you get ambushed? How many people did they have? Where is Zhuocheng?" "There's a traitor among us. He lured us into the ambush." Shan Yu's expression was twisted and ferocious as he gritted his teeth. "Who is it?" Rinpochen asked sternly, his entire body overflowing with murderous intent. The ferocious look on Shan Yu's face disappeared and was replaced by a smile. His figure flashed and he slapped his palm toward Rinpochen's forehead. "It's me." Rinpochen's expression changed drastically. Shan Yu was only 3 meters away from him. For an earthwheel expert, this was a distance that could be covered in the blink of an eye. Rinpochen could only watch helplessly as the hand got closer and closer to him. He could even feel the wind blowing against his face. He could imagine what would happen to him if this palm hit him. He definitely wouldn't look any better than Sakuma. His brain was warning his whole body, but his body couldn't move at all. He finally realized that the human brain's reaction was much faster than the body's, especially in a life and death crisis like this. However, it was useless. Even though countless thoughts were going through his mind, his body couldn't keep up with the current reaction. *CK. I was too careless. Rinpoche gritted his teeth. Who did I offend? Why am I always getting assassinated? As he was thinking about this, he saw from the corner of his eye that a man covered in blood not far away from him almost at the same time as Shanyu. The man raised his hands and between the gaps of his hands were 6 daggers. He blocked Gong Zheng, who realized that something was amiss and was rushing over. Courting death. Gong Zheng bellowed anxiously. If Rinpoche was assassinated, he would be finished. He gathered all the strength in his body, completely disregarding the daggers in his opponent's hands, and threw a punch at Shanyu. However, Shanyu had already made the first move. Seeing that his palm was about to land on Rinpoche's head, Gong Zheng could only avenge Rinpoche. Shanyu felt the wind from the punch behind him, but a smile appeared on his face. He came here with no intention of going back alive. His senior wasn't afraid of death and used his own head to exchange for this opportunity. What did he have to fear? As long as he killed this person in front of him, at this moment Shanyu felt a little regretful. The ambush on the mountain was originally prepared for the winged cavalry, but Rinpoche's sudden arrangement of these people to investigate messed up their plans. If they allowed them to investigate, the arrangements that they had made would inevitably be exposed. As a last resort, they had no choice but to change their target. After this incident, he was also exposed. Therefore, he took advantage of the opportunity to assassinate Rinpoche before those people escaped back. In the eyes of the Southern Volunteer Army, Rinpoche was Qi Zixiao's #1 evil dog, and he was even more dangerous than Shiwanya. It was precisely his proposal to pledge allegiance that caused the entire South to be in a state of panic and unrest among the various sections. Unfortunately, he was pitifully weak, and assassinating him was the easiest way to succeed. Without him, the Pledge of Allegiance naturally couldn't be carried out. The Aboriginals' ruthless style would presumably incite the resistance of the entire Tianjin Basin. Even those who had surrendered previously would rebel again. At that time, the Southern Volunteer Army's chances of winning would increase greatly. Shanyu's thoughts were all flashing in a flash. With a smile on his face, his palm was about to hit Rinpoche's head. He could already see the scene of Rinpoche dying under his palm. Presumably, Qi Zixiao would go crazy, right? He suddenly wanted to laugh out loud and opened his mouth, but the next second, the sharp pain in his hand caused his eyes to widen, and his laughter got stuck in his throat. He saw the tip of a spear drilling out from the top of Rinpoche's head and directly piercing through his palm. An iron chain wrapped around his hand along with the spear, and then wrapped around his neck before wrapping around his body. It was like a giant python wrapping around him tightly. Heaven-grade weapon? Spirit wheel? How is this possible? Shanyu opened his mouth wide and wanted to shout, but before he could speak, Gong Zheng's fist had already landed on his body. The sound of bones breaking could be heard as Shanyu smashed through the wall like a cannonball. Gong Zheng had 6 wounds on his body and blood was spurting out. When the earth wheel expert who had just injured Gong Zheng saw the golden patterned spear and the iron chain, he was shocked and shouted out what Shanyu wanted to shout. Heaven-grade weapon. Spirit wheel? How is this possible? When Mount Wu besieged the Empress, almost everyone had seen Rinpoche, but no one knew that he was actually a spirit wheel expert and had condensed a heaven-grade weapon. One had to know that other things could be deceived but heaven-grade weapons couldn't. Die. Gong Zheng was ecstatic as his huge body waved his arm and swept toward that person. That person's face was filled with horror. Without saying anything, he fled to the courtyard and ran out of the courtyard. Kill him. Rinpoche was still in shock and subconsciously shouted. Then he shouted again, let him go. Just now, he was almost smacked into the scene of a car accident, causing his heart to almost stop beating. The moment the iron chain and the spear appeared, his heart began to beat at a speed that was as if it was about to explode. After shouting, kill him, he suddenly realized a problem. Letting this person go was a good opportunity. How many times had he been assassinated by assassins every day and every month? Did they think that he was easy to bully? Spirit wheel experts were almost at the peak of this world. Except for the top few experts, it was almost impossible to assassinate a spirit wheel expert. Rinpoche wanted to borrow Gong Zheng's mouth to spread the news that he was a spirit wheel expert. Who would dare to assassinate him then? Others could play the pig to eat the tiger, but he couldn't. In terms of strength, he was King Pig. As long as his strength hadn't increased to a certain level, there would always be all kinds of people who had designs on him. There might even be his accomplices among the surrendered practitioners in the city. If he didn't want this to happen again, he might as well play the tiger to eat the pig. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.